April 23, 2019. On her 30th birthday, Vivian Hawthorne was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Mrs. Vance, your stomach cancer is in the terminal stage. With immediate treatment, there might still be a chance. Otherwise, 2 years ago, her anger had driven her father into an operation he never woke up from. His death on the operating table had left her with a deep-seated fear of the surgical suite. The mere thought of surgery made it hard for her to breathe. Vivian fled the hospital, refusing to believe her life was now on a countdown. Passing the riverfront, she struggled to climb onto the railing, facing the turbulent water and dangling her legs over the edge. She steadied her breath, pulled her phone from her pocket, and held down Ethan Vance's name. "My little wanderer, are you coming home for dinner tonight? It's my birthday. I can make you your favorite dish, okay?" A faint voice came from the other end of the line, young and pretty. Vivian didn't get angry, she just waited quietly. After a long pause, Ethan's cold reply came through. "No, I have a business dinner tonight." "Okay then, my little wanderer. I won't keep you." She hung up and stared at the river, a profound emptiness washing over her. 4 years of marriage. She once believed she had married for love, but today she suddenly understood. "I lost my little wanderer a long time ago." Still, she couldn't let Ethan go. She hoped that in the time she had left, this man could at least pretend to love her. Ethan was 6 years younger than her. If she really was going to die, she needed to make arrangements for his future. A future without her. The river breeze grew cold. She gripped the railing, climbed down, and drove to the supermarket. In the produce section, she hunched over, head down, weighing a small pumpkin in her hand, carefully comparing prices before finally making a decision. "Ethan, look at that frumpy old woman over there, hesitating for so long over a single pumpkin. She must not love her husband very much." A sweet, cloying voice cooed from behind her. "Look at me. When I pick out steak or seafood for you, I only choose the very best." Ethan, could it be her little wanderer? How could she not recognize Ethan Vance's voice? His business dinner was with the other woman. Her hand tightened on the pumpkin, the rind digging into the flesh beneath her fingernails, sending a sharp, piercing pain through her. She stood frozen, imagining a young, vibrant girl nestled in the arms of the equally young and handsome Ethan Vance. Only she had gotten old. Only she had become a frumpy old woman, a haggard wife whose life revolved around groceries and household chores. Only she had lost her little wanderer. For some reason, even though she was just standing there, the girl insisted on squeezing past her. To appear before them now, so defeated and worn, she knew Ethan and his mistress were right behind her. She had her pride, even if her love for Ethan all these years had made her forget it. Lydia Monroe recognized her and deliberately stepped on her foot, an innocent look on her face. "Ethan, why are all these old women so pushy these days? If you can't afford something, you shouldn't just stand there blocking the way for everyone else." The jab was obvious, mocking her for not divorcing Ethan even though she couldn't hold on to him. Vivian let go of the pumpkin, noticing her index finger was bleeding. The pain was sudden and sharp. They say the 10 fingers are connected to the heart. She felt the ache everywhere. "Let's go," Ethan said, his gaze indifferent as he recognized Vivian. "Why are you bothering with an old woman?" Unsatisfied, Lydia pressed herself against his chest. "I'm not bothering with her, Ethan. I just want to make a special dinner for you. Today is our 1-year anniversary. No one, not the old hag in the store or the old hag at your home, can stop me from showing you how much I truly love you." A 1-year anniversary. So from now on, her birthday would always coincide with their anniversary. If she were to die on this day, would Ethan forget her death anniversary, too? A chill settled in Vivian's heart. She turned and looked coldly at Lydia Monroe. "An old hag? You think I'm hesitating over a pumpkin? I do it so he can have a better life. You're spending lavishly now, but isn't it his money you're spending? Even if he had nothing, I would still love him and stand by him. Could you?" She didn't dare look at Ethan's face. Clenching her fists, she sized up his new lover. She was nothing special. Not as beautiful as Vivian had been in her youth, but certainly fresher than she was now. Lydia's face turned ugly, and she was speechless for a long moment. Vivian's courage suddenly failed her. She grabbed her basket and turned to leave. "Vivian, I don't give a damn." Ethan's words, spoken as he sheltered Lydia, were short, but they plunged her into a living hell. She fought back tears, forcing herself to walk away. After the scene, She had no appetite for grocery shopping. She paid quickly and left the store. When Vivian got home, she collapsed in the entryway, Ethan's words echoing in her ears. "Vivian, I don't give a damn." She sat there for a long time before suddenly getting up, grabbing the plastic bag, and heading into the kitchen. Today was her 30th birthday. Ethan would definitely come home. She was terrible at cooking, but she carefully followed a recipe, and the results were at least presentable. As she brought out the final bowl of soup, she saw the dining table had been wiped clean, the floor littered with shattered porcelain and spilled food. The dinner she had so carefully prepared was ruined. Looking at the radiant Lydia Monroe, Vivian fought the urge to throw the soup in her face. "This is my home, please leave." Ethan came down the stairs. "Vivian, this is my home too." Her fingers went limp. The large soup bowl crashed onto her foot, and scalding liquid splashed everywhere, soaking into her slippers and burning her skin. It was as if she couldn't feel it. She stared straight at Ethan and whispered, "My little wanderer, what do you mean by this?" He casually wrapped his arm around Lydia. "Vivian, if you're going to be angry, then let's get a divorce. If you can tolerate Lydia, I'm willing to continue living with you." What? Vivian's vision blurred. How had marriage twisted him into this unrecognizable person? He was the one who had proposed. He nonchalantly lifted the hem of Lydia's shirt, his fingers lightly brushing against the smooth skin of her young body. His voice grew louder. "Vivian, if you try to kick Lydia out, I will divorce you." A stinging pain began to spread across the top of her foot. She held back her tears, her voice even quieter now. "My little wanderer, what if? What if I only have a few months to live? Let Lydia go for now. After I'm gone, you can marry her. It wouldn't matter then." Ethan stared at her coldly. "What kind of tricks are you playing now?" The terror of her impending death and the crushing weight of his betrayal finally erupted under his indifference. She kicked at a piece of broken porcelain. "Ethan Vance, I choose divorce." His eyes bloodshot, Ethan grabbed Vivian's thin arm. "Don't you love me? Why are you suddenly talking about divorce again?" She just didn't want Lydia here. Before her stood the man she had loved for years, the man she had watched grow from a boy into a man. Utterly exhausted, she relented. "Do whatever you want." Ethan refused to let go. Lydia, sensing the shift, leaned against him softly. "Ethan, don't mind her. I'll cook for you. She moved closer to his ear, whispering something intimate and shy. Vivian pried his fingers off her arm and trudged heavily up the stairs. She pulled out the first aid kit and numbly treated the burn on her foot. Forget it. She suddenly threw the cotton swab aside, walked into the study, took out a fountain pen, and began to write her will. Ethan was still young. He was rebellious and unfaithful. But after she was gone, there would be no one to look after him. He would be lonely. So everything she had, she would give to him. After finishing the will, Vivian couldn't resist taking out a sheet of stationery. Slowly and deliberately, she wrote, "My little wanderer, after I'm gone, you have to take good care of yourself." She locked the documents in a drawer and stared blankly into space for a long time. Unwilling to go downstairs and watch him with another woman, she slowly made her way to the master bathroom and filled the tub halfway. Sinking into the warm water, she finally let out a sigh of relief. Her life was short, and now she was betrayed by the very husband for whom she had given up almost everything. "Ethan, can I really sleep here? Will that old hag agree?" Lydia's saccharine voice startled Vivian. The water had grown cool. Expressionless, Vivian stood up and deliberately dried her body with a towel until the very last drop was gone. She put on her pajamas and watched numbly as Ethan kissed Lydia Monroe on her bed. Lydia was the usurper, and Ethan was indulging her. Vivian was fighting a losing battle alone. What could she do? She had already told him she only had months to live. What else could possibly hold on to her little wanderer? She gathered some clothes and went to the adjacent study, curling up on the chaise lounge, forcing herself to listen to the sounds from the master bedroom. Even so, it seemed she couldn't bring herself to wish him dead. She was 6 years older than him. From the moment she fell in love, it had been unfair. She drifted off into a restless sleep. In her dream, Ethan was gripping her hand tightly. "Vivian, you can't marry Julian Shaw." After a few bizarre days of being the other woman in her own home, Vivian made the final decision to refuse surgery. Before leaving the house, she carefully applied her makeup, adding a touch of color to her face. At first glance, she looked 10 years younger, as if she were still in the prime of her youth. At the law firm, Spencer Sullivan found the situation utterly absurd. Vivian, why do you love Ethan Vance so much? You're dying, he brought his mistress home, and all you can think about is leaving your entire estate to him. Sunlight streamed through the window, blurring her vision. I don't know why either, she said. You would have been better off marrying Julian Shaw, Spencer said, angrily yanking at his tie. Vivian, why don't you know when to cut your losses? Her eyelids twitched at the mention of Julian's name. Finally, she handed him the signed divorce agreement and the will. Spencer, you're a lawyer, and I know you, so I came to you. If you're unwilling to help, I'll find someone else. Remembering Ethan's indifferent words, what kind of tricks are you playing now? Her eyes welled with tears. I will, she whispered, cut my losses. Spencer relented. Vive, I'll handle it for you. Okay, Vivian said with a nod. I'm going home then. I'll let you get back to work. Seeing Lydia Monroe eating grapes in the living room didn't elicit a strong reaction from Vivian, though a pang of sadness still hit her. Vivian, my stomach hurts. Can you call Ethan for me? Vivian was about to retreat to the study when Lydia called out to her. Looking at Lydia's rosy complexion, she said coldly, You're on your phone right now. Call him yourself. Vivian, you're old and faded. Do you really think makeup can hide that? Lydia dropped the act. The more you cling to Ethan, the more he'll despise you. That's my business. She forced herself to walk past her calmly. Once she reached the bathroom, she frantically washed the makeup from her face. The woman in the mirror was haggard and old. How could she possibly compare to Lydia? She returned to the study, and a wave of drowsiness washed over her. She fell asleep quickly, and this time she dreamt of Julian Shaw. Vivian, she was suddenly shaken awake. She looked up in a daze at the furious Ethan Vance standing before her. What's wrong? He shoved her onto the floor. You have the nerve to ask, you disgust me. Lydia's stomach was hurting. Would it have killed you to make a phone call for her? You almost killed my child. Vivian crashed onto the floor, scraping her elbow. Lydia's pregnant? She almost had a miscarriage, but she didn't lose it. What a pity. He pressed his left knee into the small of her back. Vivian, you did this on purpose, he roared. She held back tears. If I said I didn't, would you believe me? If I said Lydia set me up, would you believe me? My little wanderer, do you believe me? He shoved her away in disgust. No, it's just a child, isn't it? Ethan Vance, I can have one for you, too. The raw skin of her elbow scraped against the floor as Vivian struggled to turn over. Ethan Vance, do you really not love me anymore? She looked at him, unbuttoning her clothes at the same time. Once she was down to her pants, she staggered to her feet, bent over, and then straightened up again. For a split second, she wanted to die in Ethan's arms. That way, he would never be able to forget her for the rest of his life. But she couldn't bear the thought of him living with a lifetime of pain and shadow. She was humbly begging for his pity. Ethan's face was taut, a surge of emotion threatening to erupt. The sharp ring of a cell phone broke the stalemate. He answered. Okay, I'll be right there. Vivian lay on the floor, hugging her knees like a newborn baby. She really was old and faded. At only 30, she could strip naked and Ethan wouldn't even touch her. It hurt so much. Worried about Vivian, Spencer Sullivan manufactured a problem with the will and drove to her villa. All the doors were open. Finding this odd, Spencer called Vivian, but no one answered. Hearing the phone ringing upstairs, he stayed on the line and followed the sound to the study, where he found Vivian curled into a ball. Vivian? She didn't respond. Vive! Now genuinely panicked, Spencer touched her back and found it burning hot. His own face felt flushed. Fearing the worst, he had no time for propriety. He gently dressed her and carried her to his car. Vivian, what's so good about Ethan Vance? Vivian, if you want to die, I won't let you. Vivian, you're pregnant? She was carrying Ethan's child. Her eyelids fluttered and she woke up. Seeing a frantic Spencer, she murmured, I'm not dead. His anger flared. He tossed a lab report at her. Vivian, you still want to die? You're pregnant with Ethan Vance's child. Seeing the color drain from her face, he slapped her medical chart onto the cabinet. Vivian, if you don't have this surgery, you'll just be waiting for the baby to die with you. Vivian clutched the bedsheets, trying to sit up. Say that again. He placed his right arm around her waist and helped her sit up, his voice a mix of complex emotions. Vivian, you're pregnant. She stared at the lab report, unsure whether to be happy or sad. It must have happened about 2 weeks ago, during one of Ethan's perfunctory visits. Before, Ethan would at least pretend to maintain their marriage, sometimes once a month, sometimes twice. She was actually pregnant, but Ethan hated her now. How could he possibly want her child? All he could think about was the piece of flesh in Lydia Monroe's belly. Spencer decided he could no longer respect Vivian's wishes. He grabbed her arm. "Vivian, you can want to die, but the baby can't. If you want to keep Ethan, giving birth to a healthy child is your only chance. If you abort the baby now and wait for the cancer to kill you, you'll truly be handing Ethan over to that mistress." "It's not me handing him over. It's that Ethan doesn't love me anymore." But she didn't say it. Because Spencer's words had moved her. "Spencer, I'll do my best to keep the baby alive." She had just woken up and Spencer was still worried. "I'll go with you to see the doctor." She nodded. "Thank you, Spencer." As Spencer helped Vivian out of the hospital room, they came face to face with Ethan and Lydia, who looked as blissful as newlyweds. After getting pregnant, Lydia was even more determined to secure her position. Seeing Vivian with another man, and so intimately, was more than she could have hoped for. She deliberately nudged Ethan. "Ethan, isn't that your hag from home?" Ethan glanced over impatiently. His expression soured into anger when he saw Spencer, but he still remembered to soothe Lydia. "You're pregnant, you can't get upset. Wait here for me. I'll go tell her we're as good as divorced." "Don't worry." Lydia nodded shyly, silently cursing Vivian to a miserable death. Seeing Ethan approach, Vivian pushed Spencer away, begging in a low voice, "Go, Spencer, please go." But it was too late. Ethan blocked their path, his icy gaze fixed on Vivian's face. "Vivian, I'd almost forgotten. Without Julian Shaw, you still have Spencer Sullivan." "Julian?" Vivian suddenly remembered that day, years ago, when Julian had burst into the classroom, clutching a huge bouquet of pale pink narcissus lilies, his face flushed as he looked at her. "Vivian, I like you. Will you be with me?" The boy had sharp brows and striking eyes, with a charming mole at the corner of one eye. Her expression completely enraged Ethan. "Vivian, you're still thinking about Julian Shaw." Spencer loosened his tie and threw a punch. "Ethan Vance, if Vivian had given a damn about Julian Shaw, would she have married you?" "What's it to you?" Ethan dodged the punch and grabbed Spencer's tie. "What right do you have to hit me?" Spencer was a gentleman and no match for Ethan. He took several blows before spitting out a mouthful of blood. "Do you even know that Vivian is carrying your child, that she has terminal cancer and won't go into surgery?" "Spencer," Vivian cried out, pulling him back and dropping to her knees. "Can you just leave? I'll handle my own affairs. Please, just go." Spencer's face was bloody, but his heart ached even more. Vivian, the woman who had given up Julian Shaw, who had defied morality and driven her own father to his death, just to marry Ethan Vance, how could she, even for a second, not stand by his side? Unable to bear hurting Vivian any further, Spencer said bitterly, "Fine, I'll go. Vivian, I'm leaving." Vivian let go and Spencer stumbled away. Ethan watched coldly. Seeing Vivian kneeling on the floor, crying, only deepened his disgust for her. "Oh my God," Lydia spotted the lab report that had fallen near Ethan's feet. "Vivian, you're pregnant." Lydia was furious. That old woman had actually forced Ethan to sleep with her. And to think, at her age, she could still get pregnant unsure of Ethan's mood. Lydia knelt beside Vivian. "Vivian, being pregnant is a good thing. Why didn't you tell Ethan? Why did you tell someone else instead? I love Ethan, but I'm willing to help you take care of him." "Don't cry, Vivian. You shouldn't cry when you're pregnant." Just as she'd planned, Ethan grew suspicious. Vivian was pregnant, and Spencer was the one she contacted. Ethan yanked Vivian to her feet. "Vivian, are you carrying Julian Shaw's child, or Spencer's?" Vivian was stunned. "Ethan, what are you saying? The way you look now, Julian wouldn't want you," he said viciously. "So, when I wouldn't touch you, you couldn't stand the loneliness and found Spencer. No wonder he's so concerned about you." Her provocation successful, Lydia pretended to defend Vivian. "Ethan, how can you say that? The baby must be yours. Vivian may be over 30, but she's still quite attractive. It's normal for her to have admirers. The baby is definitely yours. Don't be angry, we can raise it together, okay?" "Lydia," Ethan replied, "you're too kind. You have no idea how disgusting this woman is." Vivian gave a bitter smile. "Disgusting? Thinking about it now, it really is disgusting." A sharp cramp seized her abdomen. She wanted to explain, but she had no strength. Ethan took her silence as an admission of guilt and dragged her into the nearest empty room. Lydia tried to follow to continue her act but was shut out. Thrown onto the hospital bed, Vivian felt a flicker of fear. "Ethan Vance, what are you doing?" He locked the door and took out the abortion pills he had originally prepared for Lydia. "Helping you have a miscarriage." Propping herself up on her elbows, Vivian scrambled toward the headboard. "Ethan, no, I'm carrying your child, it's yours, we can do a paternity test. Even if it is mine," Ethan said, pressing one knee onto the edge of the bed. He pried her mouth open with his left hand and stuffed the pills inside with his right. "I don't want it, and you're not worthy." The bitter taste of the medicine filled her mouth. Vivian tried not to swallow, but Ethan forced the pills in one by one, washing them down with half a glass of water. The cramping in her abdomen intensified until a ringing filled her ears. She rolled over onto her stomach and numbly stuck her fingers down her throat. She could almost feel her child with Ethan slipping away, piece by piece. Choking until her face was red, she collapsed onto the bed, her gaze unfocused. "Ethan Vance, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It was all wishful thinking." Why did a person doomed to die think she could give birth to a child, that a child could be her salvation? Why did she keep clinging to a man who had long since walked away from their marriage? "Ethan Vance, let's get a divorce. The villa is mine. Please take your mistress and leave my house." "As you wish," Ethan said coldly. A week later, Vivian was kneeling in front of the bathtub, pulling clumps of her fallen hair from the tile grout. After killing their child, Ethan had become completely sick of her. He had taken Lydia and left the villa, never to return. Though they weren't officially divorced, they were separated. When her phone rang, she had no desire to move, instead plucking another strand of long hair from the edge of the tub. These past few days, it felt as though she were losing a lifetime's worth of hair all at once. The ringing stopped, only to start again 2 seconds later, persistent and relentless. The sound grated on her nerves, giving her a headache. But the caller seemed determined to win this battle of wills, letting it ring continuously. Annoyed, Vivian pushed herself up using the tub for support and ran to the bedroom to grab the vibrating phone. The caller ID read, "My Little Wanderer." She paused for half a second before answering. "Ethan?" Had he run out of money or gotten into trouble? After the miscarriage, she hadn't even seen a doctor. She had fled back to the villa, covered in blood, let alone thought about surgery. She had cut herself off from the world, busying herself with small, meaningless tasks, simply waiting for death. Thinking of Ethan now, she found she no longer hated him. Every sleepless night, she wished he were by her side. She would have been content just to hear the sound of his breathing. "Vivian, your bastard lover is causing trouble for me. I'm at the police station." Ethan's imperious tone made Vivian feel as if she had been transported back several years, to when he was just a boy who followed her around, calling her Vivian, possessively forbidding her from dating anyone. Assuming she was playing dead, Ethan repeated impatiently, "Vivian, I'm at the police station, Spencer Sullivan put me here." Vivian's throat felt tight. "Okay, I'm coming." The last time Spencer and Ethan had parted on bad terms. She was afraid Spencer was now using legal means to get back at him. Ethan was young and hot-headed, especially prone to recklessness. He would be no match for Spencer at a police station. She didn't need a mirror to imagine how frail and pale she looked. Hat, scarf, gloves, a long coat, she covered herself until only half her face was visible, then grabbed her bag and rushed to the police station. Spencer must have run into Ethan and Lydia at the hospital. Ethan, likely still furious about the perceived infidelity, must have beaten him bloody again. This time, without Vivian there to intervene, Spencer had called the police. Ethan, full of resentment, had maliciously summoned Vivian. As expected, Vivian begged Spencer to let Ethan go. Ethan watched, a triumphant glint in his sharp eyes. Spencer, his own rage spent and his heart aching at the sight of Vivian's dying humility, finally gave up. Vivian tentatively took Ethan's hand. He didn't resist, and she greedily held on tighter. A cold wind blew. Standing on the steps, she took out a folded handkerchief and began to gently and intently wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. Ethan looked uncomfortable but didn't pull away. He seemed to be remembering something, his expression stiff as he avoided Vivian's tender gaze. Her eyes were full of affection. "My little wanderer," she said, her voice soft and natural, "if I were to leave, you'll take care of yourself, won't you?" For a split second, Ethan stood frozen, unconsciously murmuring. Ugh. Lydia, having learned of Ethan's trouble, had rushed over despite her discomfort, only to see Vivian looking like she was about to kiss him. A surge of anger washed over her. She charged forward and shoved Vivian hard. "Vivian, Ethan is my boyfriend, now you're divorced, can't you stop harassing him?" Vivian, weakened by her illness, collapsed onto the grass. The back of her head scraped against the stubble. Even with her hat for cushioning, the pain nearly made her pass out. Ethan instinctively caught Lydia. "Are you okay? I thought you had morning sickness. Why did you come out?" Lydia leaned against him, sobbing softly. "You remember I'm pregnant and not feeling well? You said you would marry me, but you haven't. Now you're in trouble, and instead of calling me, you call your old hag. Fine, go be with her, I'll take the baby and leave. I won't ruin things for you two anymore." "What are you talking about?" Ethan said, a little flustered. "I'll take you home." Vivian was still in pain, lying motionless on the grass, completely ignored. The cold wind howled past. She slowly closed her eyes. So, he still loves Lydia. She's pregnant, so her baby is a treasure. I was pregnant, and my baby was a bastard from God knows which man. The image of Ethan forcing the abortion, pills down her throat, flashed before her eyes, and the pain of her child being ripped from her body returned with a vengeance. Vivian was tired. Just let me die like this. Everyone who loved me is already dead, and the one who's alive doesn't love me anymore. Vivian, Spencer, having finished the paperwork, was leaving the police station when he saw Vivian lying completely still. He was terrified. Vivian's breathing was faint. She didn't respond. Ethan had hit him hard and Spencer's whole body ached, but he still bent down, lifted Vivian into his arms, settled her carefully in his car, and sped to the hospital. Spencer's face was bruised and he looked a mess, but at the hospital, his only concern was urging the doctors to treat Vivian. It was only then that he learned. Vivian's baby was long gone. The miscarriage had been so traumatic that she could never get pregnant again. Listening to the doctor's calm, clinical words, Spencer was suddenly filled with regret. He shouldn't have been so soft at the police station, even if it hurt Vivian. He should have made Ethan Vance suffer. "Doctor," he asked desperately, "can you operate on her?" He wanted her to live. He didn't care about Vivian's wishes anymore. The doctor looked at him with compassion. "It's too late. Besides her current physical condition, she's not fit for surgery." Spencer fell silent. "The patient has a few days left," the doctor added. "You should spend more time with her. If she's in a good mood, maybe a miracle will happen." Spencer nodded numbly. He didn't want to nod. Nodding meant accepting that Vivian only had a few days left. Vivian was eventually moved to a regular ward. She woke up in the middle of the night, calling out, "My little wanderer." Spencer had watched over her the entire night. When Vivian awoke, she was so thin her cheekbones protruded, her hair was sparse, and her face was devoid of color, but her eyes were still alive. "Vive, what do you want to eat? I'll go buy it for you." Vivian shook her head listlessly. "Vive, it snowed last night. The view outside is beautiful. Will you go for a walk with me?" Vivian shook her head again. "Vive, the doctor said you're fine. I'll take you home, okay?" "I don't believe you," she said. After collapsing on the grass, she had drifted in and out of consciousness. Last night, she had dreamt of her father and mother. In that world, there was no Ethan Vance. They wouldn't blame her. They would compete to dote on her. "Vive, do you want Ethan to be with you?" Her eyelashes trembled. A familiar face appeared in her mind's eye, a young Ethan. After a long pause, she whispered, "No," but Spencer knew she did, desperately. Vivian had no energy. She had been awake for a while, and only after he practically begged on his knees did she agree to take 2 sips of porridge. The moment Spencer stepped out, Vivian rolled off the bed and dry heaved into the trash can. Spencer asked a nurse to look after Vivian and went to find Ethan. Ethan was at a hot spring with a young woman. He was surprised to get Spencer's call. "Looking for another beating?" "Yes, where the hell are you?" Spencer finally swore, pushed to his limit by Ethan. Ethan sneered and gave him the address. Spencer stood at the edge of the pool, watching Ethan's hand rest on the girl's waist. And the girl, her face flushed from the steam, was definitely not Lydia Monroe, the woman pregnant with his child. He'd already replaced her. Spencer jumped into the water and swung a punch. "Ethan Vance, will you die if you don't switch women? Vivian loves you so much. Are all these young, pretty girls really better than her?" "None of your business." Ethan shoved the young woman aside and fought back without hesitation. Ordinarily, Spencer was no match for him, and his injuries from the night before hadn't been treated. But fueled by rage, his blows were heavy and vicious, and the two men began to brawl. The girl screamed and fled, hastily wrapping a large towel around herself to go get help. A few minutes later, Spencer was lying at the edge of the pool, beaten once again. "Ethan Vance, Vivian is really dying. She's in the hospital. I begged the doctor to operate, and he said it was too late." Thinking of the scene from last night, his eyes turned red. Ethan lowered his fists. "You think I'll believe you?" Spencer roared. "Why would I lie to you? She knows I like her. But she never gave me the time of day she came to me, because she found out about the cancer and wrote a will leaving everything to you. She wanted me to handle it all because she was afraid you'd get cheated." Spencer's words were so raw and genuine that Ethan began to have doubts. Suddenly, he remembered what she had said on her birthday. "My little wanderer, what if I only have a few months to live? Let Lydia go for now. After I'm gone, you can marry her. It wouldn't matter then." Then another image flashed in his mind, that day at the hospital when he had forced the abortion pills down her throat. Could it be that he was feeling a pang of regret? But hadn't he stopped loving that old woman long ago? Spencer thought of Vivian's lifeless expression and swallowed his pride. He knelt before Ethan Vance. "I'm begging you, go and be with her. It's just for the last few days. If she wasn't thinking of you, why would I be begging you like this?" Ethan watched Spencer warily, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Vivian's entire estate is yours," Spencer continued. "Her medical bills from now on, her funeral. I can cover all of it. If you need money, I can give it to you. If you need my help with anything, I'll do it. Anything I have, I can give you. I'm truly begging you to help her live. Pretend, even if you have to pretend, to love her for these last few days." Ethan's first instinct was to snap. What gives you the right to act like you love her so much? What was there to love about an old woman like that? But what came out was, "Where's the hospital?" This had to be a play Vivian had sent Spencer to perform. He had to go and expose her himself. Lydia watched Spencer and Ethan leave, her beautiful face twisting into a hideous mask. She had followed Ethan here to catch him cheating. She never expected to overhear something like this. The old hag was dying and leaving everything to Ethan. And even on her deathbed, the old hag was still trying to possess him. And Ethan actually went so he got her pregnant, but he still loved that old hag? She clenched her fists. "No, I can't just sit here and do nothing in the car." Spencer took out a file folder. "This is Vivian's will, and the divorce agreement she signed." Ethan, convinced it was a lie, didn't move. Spencer continued on his own. "Vivian talked about divorcing you, but she couldn't bear to hand you the papers, have you sign them, and go to the courthouse. Even until her death, she wanted you to be her husband. Ethan, I don't know much about your past, so I won't comment. But for these past 4 years, she has truly loved you. Even if you've moved on, or whatever, for these last few days, just be a good husband to her." Ethan remained silent, his expression unreadable. One moment, he felt that Vivian was truly leaving him this time. The next, he thought Spencer deserved an Oscar for a performance, so convincing it felt real. On their way to the ward, Spencer and Ethan ran into a doctor doing his rounds. The doctor offered a few more words of comfort to Spencer. That was when Ethan realized something was wrong. No matter how wealthy or powerful Vivian was, could she really bribe a doctor? Still, Spencer feared Ethan would only make things worse. He warned him again and again, "Ethan Vance, I'm begging you, be good to her." "Get lost," Ethan shoved him away. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Remembering that Vivian's every thought was of Ethan, Spencer had no choice but to let go and watch him go inside. When Ethan saw Vivian struggling to climb onto the windowsill, the word escaped him before he could think. "Vivian, don't jump." It was a raw, instinctual emotion that burst forth, buried deep, beyond doubt, beyond disgust, beyond pride. Hearing his voice, Vivian's hand slipped and she nearly fell. But she steadied herself and, with great effort, stood up on the ledge. Pressing her palm against the cool, transparent glass, she looked back at him. "My little wanderer, are you being sincere?" Just minutes earlier, Lydia had called, telling her that Ethan knew she was dying and was only coming to be with her to trick her out of her inheritance. He needed the money to give Lydia and their child the best possible life. Hadn't she already given him everything? Why couldn't he even wait these last few days? It had been so long since he had truly looked at her. His face was just as she remembered it, but now it was etched with a profound weariness. The cancer must be real. She, who had always been in good shape, was now painfully thin. His eyes stung, but his throat felt clogged, and he couldn't force out the word sincere. As he began to lean toward the truth that Vivian's devotion was genuine, he found he couldn't bear it, let alone find the courage to face it. And in Vivian's ears, Lydia's words echoed. "Vivian, did you hear that? That's the promise Ethan made to me. As soon as he cheats you out of your money, he's giving it all to me. Vivian, he didn't love you when you were healthy. Now that you're sick, even older and uglier, why would he want to be with you? Vivian, what's the point of you being alive? He doesn't love you at all, just go die." The wind blew past, chilling her. Vivian tightened her grip, her voice gentle. "Everything you want, I'll give it to you. If you think Lydia is so wonderful, then marry her." If she could, she would have wanted to live to see Ethan change his mind, to watch their farce play out. She hated the triumphant Lydia, but she was in too much pain. The illness, Ethan's lack of love, every extra second she breathed was another second of agony. She took one last, lingering look at him, engraving his young, handsome face into her heart. Then she turned away, all hope extinguished. "My little wanderer, I never regretted falling in love with you. I just regret marrying you." As a sharp spasm twisted her stomach, Vivian jumped. Vivian, seeing the flash of her disappearing dress, Ethan screamed, his voice breaking. Vivian had really jumped. It wasn't an act. It wasn't a ploy to trap him. So everything Spencer had said, the terminal illness, the will, it was all true. "My little wanderer, I never regretted falling in love with you." Knowing her, those were truly her last words. She hated him for not loving her enough, for loving someone else, for killing their child. So she had to say those words, to make him suffer for the rest of his life. A second before she jumped, he was still thinking about how to get rid of this problem called Vivian for good. Now he was truly free, but he no longer had the courage to face it. When Vivian was 18, she was in a rebellious phase. She was attending university alone in Seaport City, and to make it easier to work part-time, had to rent the cheapest studio apartment near campus. It was in a dilapidated alley, with a door that was barely worthy of the name. But the thought of sharing a place with others made her feel unsafe. The late autumn air was beginning to turn cold. After her evening shift at the supermarket, Vivian shivered as she walked down the street. Gritting her teeth, she quickened her pace toward home. Thud after a loud noise, a dark shape rolled in front of her, landing heavily on her feet. Terrified, she grabbed a nearby lamppost for support. "You! Get out, get the hell out of here, you little punk, I paid for my fun. What the hell are you doing interfering?" A coarse, angry voice cut her off. It was followed by the deafening slam of a door, and the commotion from deep within the alley ceased. It took Vivian a long moment to recover. The warm breath against her leg belonged to a living person. She bent down and, in the dim light, took the boy's arm, pulling him to his feet. "Are you okay?" As the warm yellow light fell on Ethan Vance's face, she saw he was just a boy. Young, innocent, and filled with a defiant rage. An uneasy feeling settled in her. She gently touched the bruise on his temple. "Does it hurt?" Ethan's mother, Isabella Sterling, had been abducted at 18 and had been in the sex trade ever since. She didn't even know who Ethan's father was. The only thing that changed after Ethan was born was that Isabella went from being a sought-after top-call girl to a cheap streetwalker. To support Ethan, Isabella endured. But if she stayed in one place for too long, too many scorned wives came looking for trouble, so she moved every year or two. This was not the first time Ethan had clashed with one of Isabella's clients, but it was the first time he had run into Vivian after being thrown out. Never having been treated with such tenderness before, Ethan flinched, pulling away from Vivian's touch. "It doesn't hurt." Ah, Isabella's cry, a mix of agony and pleasure, made Vivian blush. Though she had never been in a relationship, she knew what was happening. Glancing at Ethan, whose lips were pressed into a thin line, she asked tentatively, "Why don't you come home with me?" "Where's your home?" Ethan asked, eyeing her warily. Vivian pointed down the alley. "2 doors down from your place. Far enough not to hear the commotion, but not too far from home." Ethan nodded. "Okay." Who wouldn't feel terrible watching their mother please other men for money? Because of this, Vivian didn't mind Ethan's almost rude demeanor. She gently placed a hand on his thin shoulder. "My place is small, but it's warm. Is there anything to eat?" Ethan cut her off. Whenever he got into it with one of those ugly men, Isabella would starve him, leaving him to fend for himself. Thinking of her pantry, she said, "I have crackers, and I can make you a bowl of egg noodle soup." She was always alone, and on days off, the most she ever made was noodle soup. Between school and work, she rarely had a chance to cook. Ethan grunted, unafraid that Vivian might be a bad person. Nothing could be worse than being repeatedly thrown out of his own home by his mother's clients. In the narrow hallway, Vivian fumbled for her old key and skillfully opened the weathered wooden door. Click. Warm yellow light instantly filled the room. Vivian pointed to the only chair in the room. "Here, go sit down for a bit." Ethan walked over without a word. She closed the door and went into the kitchen. There was half a bunch of greens on the cutting board. She smiled, carefully picking off the withered leaves to get to the tender hearts. She boiled the noodles, cracked in an egg, and added the chopped greens. Fearing Ethan was starving, she made the simplest boiled noodle soup. In no time, a steaming bowl of clear broth with egg noodles was ready. Pinching the rim of the glass bowl, Vivian carefully carried it out of the kitchen and placed it on the small table on her bed. The so-called studio was more like a large bedroom partitioned into a bedroom, living room, kitchen, and bathroom. To have more space to move, she had gotten rid of all non-essential furniture. Besides a small wardrobe next to the bed, the only other piece taking up space was the chair. "Come and eat," she said, blowing on her burning fingers. Ethan stared at the steaming noodles for a moment, then moved his chair closer to the bed. Vivian handed him a pair of chopsticks. "Eat it while it's hot." Famished, Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed the chopsticks and began to wolf down the noodles. "Don't burn yourself," she said gently. She had planned to take a hot shower as soon as she got home, but she didn't feel right leaving Ethan alone, so she took out some homework from her bag to review. The sound of slurping noodles, mixed with the rustling of turning pages, created an unexpectedly pleasant melody. "I'm done." Ethan had drunk every last drop of soup before putting down his bowl. Vivian wasn't a great cook, but he was starving. And for some reason, the simple egg and vegetable noodle soup tasted like something his mother would make. Back when he was little, before he would scream and try to drive the men away, his mother used to make him noodles. Vivian looked up, put her papers aside, and walked toward him. "I'll clean that up for you." Picking up the empty bowl, she thought for a moment, then said hesitantly, "Are you?" She didn't know if the man who had hit Ethan would be staying the night. She wanted to ask if he was planning to go back, but she couldn't find the right words. Before she could figure out what to say, Ethan suddenly reached out, his palm pressing against her chest through her clothes. His long fingers were spread wide, firmly cupping her. Vivian froze as if electrocuted. After a long moment, she frowned. "What are you doing?" If one of the boys who gave her love letters had been so bold, she would have slapped him without a second thought. If the bowl had still been full of hot soup, she would have dumped it on his head. But this was Ethan Vance, a boy who had been beaten and had rolled to a stop at her feet. Her expression hardened. "Let go." Not only did Ethan not let go, but he mimicked the movements of those other men. "Does this feel good?" he asked in all seriousness, his words laced with a teasing tone. Vivian's face flushed crimson. She smacked his hand away. "Don't touch me like that if you do it again. If you do it again." Meeting Ethan's defiant gaze, she couldn't bring herself to say the words, "Get out." Noticing the strange blush on Vivian's face, Ethan's hand suddenly felt like it was on fire. He snatched it back as if shocked. "I'm sorry." Vivian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Finally, she placed the bowl and chopsticks in the sink and returned to the bedroom. "Are you going home?" Ethan thought she was kicking him out. The soft warmth of her seemed to linger on his palm. He understood what he had done wrong. He looked up, his dark eyes locking onto her still youthful face, and apologized with utmost sincerity. "Vivian, I'm sorry." The sudden change caught her off guard. "I did that because those bad men are always doing that to my mom," he said earnestly. "I hate that they bully her, but then she punishes me for it. Vivian, I just wanted to know if it feels good, why they all like to do it." Ethan's gaze was still direct, and perhaps only the thin layer of sweat on his palm betrayed his nervousness. Vivian wasn't paying attention to such small details. His explanation left her speechless. To this day, The most independent thing she had ever done was move to Seaport City for university and pay her own tuition and living expenses. She had never been in a relationship. She'd had her share of adolescent crushes, but they were all fleeting. It wasn't that she didn't understand sex and love literature, romance novels, and movies had explained it in countless ways, but for her, it was all theoretical. She knew she couldn't answer the questions of this boy she had brought home out of a moment of pity. Why his mother had to please those strange men for money. Why his mother punished him for trying to push away the rough men who hurt her. And she couldn't answer whether a woman enjoyed or resisted having her chest touched. After a long moment of thought, she finally said, "I'm sorry, Vivian doesn't know." Ethan blinked, and a smile broke across his face. "Vivian, I don't want to go home. Can I stay here?" When the boy's face was stern, he looked sinister. But now, Ethan seemed to be bathed in sunlight. His lips were red, his teeth white, and every feature was perfectly sculpted. When he smiled, he was as beautiful as a young boy from an old French film. On an impulse, Vivian agreed. Fearing she would change her mind, Ethan sat obediently on the edge of the bed, his eyes fixed on the stack of homework at the head of the bed. Coming to her senses, Vivian followed his gaze and asked softly, "Do you have homework you haven't finished, too?" "I've never been to school." Ethan lowered his eyes, his voice growing quieter. "Mom said that raising me was the most she could do." The words Isabella had spat at him were still awkward on his tongue, and he had to roll them around before he could say them completely. A strange but overwhelming wave of pity washed over Vivian. Forgetting her earlier discomfort, she let down her guard and gently patted the top of his head. "Do you want to go to school? If you do, I'll help you." The words were out before she realized what she was saying. A boy like Ethan, who seemed so prickly on the outside, was actually the most insecure. He might be trusting her simply because of a bowl of noodles, or because she hadn't gotten angry when he touched her. She couldn't break a promise to a child like this. His head shot up, and his eyes suddenly sparkled. Yes, the short strands of his hair brushed against her palm, a strange, ticklish sensation. And in her heart, an unfamiliar warmth flowed. After a few seconds of silence, she said seriously, "Okay, Vivian will help you." The light fell lazily around her, enveloping her in a warm glow that made her look as gentle as water. At that moment, Ethan thought he would never meet anyone more beautiful in his entire life. Vivian took a picture book out of her bag and handed it to Ethan. "Here, you can look at this for tonight. Vivian's a little tired. I'm going to take a shower and go to sleep." Taking the book reverently, Ethan promised sincerely, "Go ahead, Vivian, I'll be good." To be allowed to stay, the boy hid his prickly nature and became soft and harmless. How could she possibly resist? She wasn't afraid of the cold. Even in the dead of winter, she wore thin, form-fitting slip dresses. After her shower, she changed into a dress as usual, but when she saw her mostly bare shoulders in the mirror, she suddenly remembered the boy she had taken in. Thinking of his trespassing hands, a strange, inexplicable heat rose within her. Vivian quickly covered her chest, wrapping herself up tightly. Perhaps it was her lack of romantic experience that made her so easily. Vivian decided that once she wasn't so busy, she would carefully choose a boy from school and start dating. After all that, she was truly exhausted. If you like it, take your time reading. Just remember to turn off the light when you go to sleep. With that, Vivian fell onto the bed and was asleep almost as soon as her head hit the soft mattress. Ethan couldn't actually read. He struggled to understand the story using the illustrations. After dozing off several times, he finally dog-eared a page, closed the book, and carefully placed it back in her bag. Seeing her sprawled out asleep, with the small table and her bag still on the bed, he frowned in displeasure. Was this her way of telling him he wasn't welcome to sleep on the bed? He understood what it meant to be a guest. He didn't throw a tantrum like he would at home. Instead, he quietly put away her bag and placed the small table on the chair. Just as he was about to lie down next to her, he caught a fragrant scent. She had showered. He had been kicked and rolled around on the ground by that old man. He must be filthy. Remembering how his mother always ordered him to take a bath, he ran into the bathroom and quickly rinsed off. He left his dirty clothes in the bathroom, turned off the light, and slipped into bed naked. It was a little cold, but thankfully Vivian had warmed the bed. He snuggled up to her. In a sleepy haze, he murmured, "Mama." Vivian's internal clock was regular. Waking up to this was quite a shock. She was completely entangled. Although Vivian thought of Ethan as a child, she still blushed. She lay there rigidly for a long time, so long that her leg began to go numb. She wanted to get angry, but she was worried about giving Ethan the wrong impression. After all, he was missing his mother, not her, a strange older girl. His exploration last night was, at its core, a result of his lack of guidance. As she was debating what to do, Ethan mumbled, "hungry," and rolled over. The weight on her waist was gone. She quickly rolled away and executed a difficult dismount from the bed. Once she recovered from a strange, dizzy spell, she noticed Ethan's calf hanging off the edge of the bed. Vivian sighed, gently took his ankle, and pushed his leg back under the covers, carefully tucking him in. Perhaps because she had always envied her neighbors and relatives who had siblings, she felt a deep sense of pity and tolerance, even affection, for Ethan, whose situation was far worse than simply being lonely. Ethan was awakened by the aroma from the kitchen. He sat up abruptly, still groggy from sleep, his eyes hazy as he stared at the steam-filled kitchen. It smelled good, like pork wontons. As his vision cleared, he focused on Vivian's slender figure. Ethan instinctively swallowed. He scrambled into the bathroom and, not caring that they were dirty, put on the clothes he had left there the night before, which were now dry. Vivian came out with a bowl of wonton soup and saw his wrinkled clothes. "Remember to change into clean clothes when you get home, okay?" The boy nodded meekly, too ashamed to admit he didn't have any clean clothes. She tilted her chin up slightly. "Go set up the little table," she said gently. Seeing him obediently do as she asked, her heart softened and she completely forgot about the morning's awkwardness. "What's your name?" she asked with a smile. "Ethan Vance," he said, folding out the table's legs and holding it steady. She placed the bowl and chopsticks down. "Go on, eat." Ethan was truly hungry. As soon as he got permission, he didn't care that it was hot and began shoveling the food into his mouth. She watched him for a moment. "Eat slowly." When she saw that he was nodding but not slowing down, she felt a mix of helplessness and pity. His mother was living hand to mouth. She probably couldn't take good care of him. As they were leaving, Vivian finally said what she had been thinking about all morning. "Ethan, I have classes during the day and work at night. I might get back as late as yesterday. Why don't you wait for me at your house? I'll definitely talk to your mother about sending you to school." Ethan nodded obediently and followed her out of the room. In the long alley, their shadows, one long and one short, occasionally intertwined. When they stopped at his door, Ethan felt a sudden panic and gripped the hem of her coat tightly. "Vivian, you will come look for me, right? You're not lying to me, are you?" Vivian searched her heart. The thought of negotiating with Ethan's mother made her want to back down. To put it bluntly, she and Ethan were just strangers who had met by chance. She could easily wash her hands of him. If she was worried he would cause trouble, it wouldn't be hard for her to find another place to rent. But the fear and hope in the boy's eyes dispelled that fleeting thought. She gently took Ethan's tense hand and gave it a squeeze. "I will." As if that wasn't formal enough, she added, "Ethan Vance, I will." Ethan still felt insecure, but he knew he couldn't make a scene. He could only wait. Vivian was much nicer than his mother, but he worried that if he did something wrong, she might abandon him completely. He wanted to go to school. He wanted to sleep in a warm embrace like last night. He wanted to be strong enough to drive away the disgusting men who bullied his mother. He wanted so much. And for the first time, he had an intense belief that Vivian could give him everything he wanted. As a freshman, Vivian's course load wasn't heavy, but she was ambitious and would stay in the classroom to study even when she didn't have class. When the bell rang for the 4th time, Vivian closed her book and rubbed her throbbing temples. It was time for lunch. As she packed her bag, she suddenly remembered her plan to find a boyfriend. University was a world away from high school, but most freshmen still had that high school mix of innocence and passion. Vivian's looks had made her a hot topic on the school's online forums since she arrived. She had received mountains of love letters. Choosing a boyfriend would be easy. With that thought, she pulled out 2 love letters she had received that morning. Last night, she had thought about waiting a while, but now, thinking about how she needed to genuinely help Ethan, she decided to find a boyfriend sooner rather than later. The pink letter was romantic. The boy had drawn the back of a couple holding hands with a single line of confession. If I could, I would want to walk through this long life with you. Vivian ran her fingers over the drawing, then pulled out the second letter. The opening was simple and direct. Hello, Vivian, my name is Spencer Sullivan, and I like you. He went on to state his major and year, the projects he had worked on, his future ambitions, and his ability to provide her with a good life. With almost no hesitation, Vivian decided to reply to Spencer's letter. She valued a stable relationship more than romance. Clang, just as she was about to start writing, a loud noise erupted. Startled, she dragged her pen across the paper, leaving an ugly mark. After calming down, she put the pen down and looked toward the sound. She saw a boy holding a bouquet of pale pink narcissus lilies, stumbling to his feet, his face red as he looked at her. Vivian, I like you. Will you be with me? The boy had sharp brows and striking eyes, with a charming mole at the corner of one eye. He was easy to recognize. She remembered him. Pulling out a comic drawing from the bottom of her stack of papers, she showed it to him and asked calmly, You drew this, didn't you? Julian Shaw scratched the back of his head, embarrassed. I did. I gave you a love letter yesterday, but I couldn't sleep at all last night. I thought, if I can't be with you, it will be the biggest regret of my life. So, I came back today. I heard you like narcissus lilies, and I looked for a long time to find such a beautiful bouquet. Otherwise, I would have come to you sooner. After he finished, he held the bouquet out to her, as if presenting a treasure for her to see the brightly blooming flowers. Vivian's heart suddenly softened. Okay, I'll be your girlfriend. Vivian took the bouquet, placed it on her desk, and took his hand. I'm Vivian. You might not know much about me yet, but I hope you'll like me more in the future. Julian grinned so wide his eyes disappeared. I definitely will, he promised, patting his chest. And the letter she had intended for Spencer was never written. That evening, while shelving books in the library, Vivian couldn't stop worrying about Ethan. She finished her work quickly and called her manager at the bar to take the night off. Even so, it was already 9 o'clock by the time she got back to the alley. The door to Ethan's house was shut tight and the windows were dark. Alarm bells went off in her head. Vivian rushed to the dilapidated door and knocked urgently. Ethan, are you there? Even if they moved often, it was unlikely they would be gone in a single day. If they had moved, they must have gotten into some kind of trouble. I'm here. Through the wooden door, amidst the sound of her knocking and shouting, Ethan's reply was barely a whisper, but she heard it clearly. Her racing heart settled back into place. She composed herself and forced a smile. Creak, the door opened. Ethan looked up at her. Vivian, I thought you weren't coming. That wet, pitiful look in his eyes was something you would only see on a lost fawn in the forest. Her heart melted completely. She ruffled his hair. I was coming. I promised you, and I'll keep my promise. A cold gust of wind made Ethan shiver. He quickly pulled her inside. Vivian, my mom's not back yet. Are you willing to wait with me? He was still scared, his voice trembling as he pleaded. I'm willing, she said, her voice as gentle as possible. But why aren't the lights on? Ethan lied without batting an eye. My mom didn't pay the electric bill. The truth was, he was afraid his mother would bring one of those disgusting men back and immediately start doing those disgusting things, scaring Vivian away. Vivian didn't suspect a thing. In the darkness, she let him lead her by the hand. Because of Isabella's profession, Ethan had learned to navigate in the dark from a young age. But this time, leading Vivian, he felt a little nervous. Fortunately, he successfully guided her back to his small corner of the world. Vivian, sit here. Ethan patted the cold straw mat on the wooden board that served as his bed. Her right hand touched the hard edge of the bed. She slowly sat down and asked softly, Will your mom be back soon? If she's not coming back tonight, why don't you come to my place? Her rental was small, but it had everything. Not like this place, which didn't even have the basic necessity of electricity. Ethan moved closer to her, his voice low. She should be back. My mom is always home at night. As he said it, his mind wandered. It was always him who couldn't stand those men and got kicked out. No matter how you looked at it, it was entirely possible that Isabella wouldn't be back at all. Vivian had already considered this possibility, but she kept a calm expression. She didn't know how to explain it to Ethan, and she didn't know how to handle it if he got upset. Thump, thump, thump. In the quiet darkness, the sound of their 2 heartbeats was amplified. They couldn't tell whose nervous, fluttering heart was pounding in their ears. After sitting in silence for a long time, the atmosphere grew increasingly strange. She couldn't help but speak up. "Ethan, maybe, you old devil." Before she could finish, Isabella's high-pitched, coquettish voice drowned her out. The sound was so startling that Vivian's heart nearly stopped. Before she could process what to do, a strange warmth enveloped her ears. The boy's palms, whether from being clenched for too long or from nerves, were warm and slightly sweaty. "Don't listen," Ethan whispered, his lips brushing against the back of his hand. Vivian's ears burned, and the heat spread through her body like a slow-moving current. The feeling was so strange, and it made her panic. Although Ethan was pressing his hands firmly against her ears, she still heard everything. The man, Mr. King, was not treating Isabella like a human being. For his own amusement, he humiliated her in every way possible. Even Vivian was horrified by what she heard. How must it be for Ethan? She couldn't even imagine how young Ethan had been when he was first surrounded by these sounds of depravity and repression. No wonder Ethan had such a strange and unprecedented personality. If she had grown up in this environment, she would probably be even more timid, dark, and helpless than Ethan. Several long hours passed. The only warmth Vivian felt was from Ethan's palms, which never left her ears. A few times she heard him take a sharp breath and guessed his arms were getting sore. She wanted to tell him to let go, but his stubbornness kept her silent. "Here's your money, you hussy, I'll be back for you next time," the man said, throwing a wad of cash on the floor. Isabella, still on her knees, immediately scrambled to pick up all the money. "Thank you, Mr. King, please come again. What did a little humiliation matter, as long as there was money?" After the portly man left, Isabella remained kneeling on the floor, suddenly in a daze. How had she become such a despicable woman? Before, she had been forced. Now she wished for more paying customers. It was probably after she had Ethan. After she had this son, whom she had never truly loved, but had fought desperately to raise. Hearing a noise from Ethan's room, Isabella threw on a nightgown and staggered over, intending to ask Ethan to go buy some late-night snacks. "Is now really a good time to talk?" Hearing Vivian's voice, Isabella frowned and threw the door open. The light from the master bedroom spilled into Ethan's small room, revealing Ethan and Vivian sitting face to face. Rage flared instantly. Isabella adopted a motherly posture and demanded, "Ethan, who did you bring home? What are you trying to do?" She almost asked, "Are you trying to be like me?" Only in that moment of hesitation did she realize she might be an unfit mother. "Mom," Ethan's face flushed and he stammered nervously, "Mom, I." It was Vivian who suppressed her panic, stood up, and looked at Isabella calmly. "Ma'am, hello, please don't misunderstand. I'm not a bad person. I want to help Ethan." Isabella was very beautiful, but the constant toll on her beauty had left her looking thin and haggard. Seeing that Isabella was beautiful and not outwardly aggressive, Vivian's panic began to subside. Noticing Vivian's student-like demeanor and an air of worldly innocence, Isabella softened her tone slightly. "What can you help with?" Then, she added mockingly, "Donate money to me?" Vivian placed a hand on Ethan's, which was trembling as it clutched the hem of his shirt. Her gaze toward Isabella grew firmer. "I want Ethan to go to school. He's still a child, he's young, he shouldn't be locked up in here." "Go to school?" Isabella crossed her arms, her gaze sharpening. "So I can go find a few more perverted clients. So his teachers and classmates can all laugh at him for having a mother like me?" The blunt words hit Vivian like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of her. She hadn't expected Isabella to be so direct. Feeling Ethan tremble, Vivian was suddenly filled with an unknown strength. She took a deep breath. "Ma'am, you don't have to do this. You're just scared. You don't dare to leave your current comfort zone. Everything is difficult at the beginning, but once you get through it, things will be better. I'm paying my tuition by working part-time. I'm timid, and on my first job, I couldn't do anything right. But now, I have several part-time jobs and can support myself." Isabella's expression flickered, but her tone remained mocking. That's easily said, for her to enter a normal social circle? How could that be easy? Because she was beautiful, and because of the worldly air she had accumulated over the years, any job she tried to get usually ended with some disgusting man trying to take advantage of her. It wasn't that she hadn't tried. For no reason, Vivian felt Isabella's gaze was so cold it was piercing. She shivered involuntarily and took a step back. "Ma'am, if it really comes down to it, I can be responsible for Ethan's tuition. If there are parent-teacher conferences or any other activities, I can attend as his older sister." The words tumbled out of her, and Vivian didn't regret them. Her parents weren't short on money. They both opposed and worried about her decision to be self-sufficient. If she really had to take on Ethan's education, it would be a small matter of asking her parents. Isabella suddenly burst into wild laughter. Her smeared makeup seemed to flake off her aging skin. Vivian was stunned. Ethan, hiding behind Vivian, didn't dare move. He knew he had chosen the right person. Vivian would help him. How could someone like her, who had only ever known warmth, bear to watch him sink into the swamp? "What, you want me to give Ethan up to your family for adoption?" After she finished laughing, Isabella wiped a tear from the corner of her eye and sneered. Caught off guard by the question, Vivian's lips parted, but no words came out. Adopt Ethan? Growing up, her family had always doted on her. She could have anything she wanted. She suspected that if she asked for a younger brother this time, she would probably get her wish. Although, the process might be a bit more difficult. Seeing Vivian actually considering it, a fire of rage ignited within Isabella, completely burning away her reason. She slapped Vivian across the face, her voice sharp and severe. "Who do you think you are? Ethan is my son. What right do you have to love him more than I do?" Vivian's skin was delicate. Her right cheek instantly turned red and began to swell. Mom, even Ethan, who had been watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but cry out. Isabella shook her wrist, showing no remorse. Seeing Vivian standing there in a daze, she said coldly, "Ethan is my son. I can raise him myself. I don't need your fake kindness now. Please leave my home. What right do you have to love him more than I do?" The question echoed in Vivian's ears. She found herself wondering, is it love? She had clearly pitied Ethan. Pitied him for having to face the darkest side of society at such a young age. Pitied him for not having the normal love of a father and mother. Pitied him for not being able to go to school and enrich himself. Pitied him for being trapped in this cramped rental, unable to see a bright future. That was all. "I told you to get out, do you hear me?" After waiting a few seconds, Isabella lost her patience and grabbed Vivian's arm. The pain brought Vivian back to reality. She grabbed the doorframe and pleaded softly, "Ma'am, that's not it. I'm not trying to take Ethan from you. I just really think you should let him go to school. He's very smart, and he'll definitely do well. When he grows up and makes a name for himself, he'll make you proud." Isabella was unmoved. She pried Vivian's whitening fingers from the frame with a vicious twist. Vivian clenched her teeth, the pain forcing tears from her eyes. The feeling of her fingers about to break made her want to give up. Reflexively, she looked at Ethan. Through her tear-blurred vision, the despair in his eyes pierced her. After this scene, she feared Isabella would never let Ethan have contact with strangers again. Either she succeeded, or he was lost. "Ah," Vivian cried out in pain. "Ma'am, what you're doing now, do you want Ethan to learn from you and become like you in the future?" The cruel, blood-soaked words made Isabella falter, and the strength in her hands lessened. Vivian seized the opportunity to pull her hand back. Ignoring the pain in her fingers, she moved to stand in front of Ethan, shielding him. At that time, she didn't know she would make a habit of protecting him like this until her last breath. Isabella's eyes lost focus. Her knees suddenly buckled, and she fell to the floor. Ignoring the fact that Vivian and her son were both there, she began to wail. Her throat was already raw from crying after being tormented by the man earlier, but she still howled. It was as if all her grievances had been unleashed by Vivian's words. The sound of her heart-wrenching sobs made Vivian feel as if the world were collapsing, but she didn't dare go to comfort her. She just held Ethan's hand tighter. Finally, Isabella cried until her voice was hoarse and her eyes were red. "You can take him to school," Isabella said, still kneeling, her voice a difficult rasp. How could she bear to let him suffer the same fate she had endured for the first half of her life? Didn't she feel afraid when men occasionally looked at Ethan with a strange glint in their eyes? Just now, wasn't she worried that Ethan was bringing a girl home at such a young age to fool around? She had maternal instincts, but she didn't dare to face them. Vivian's appearance had challenged her authority and completely shattered it. At this moment, did she have a choice? Was she going to cruelly say to her son's face, "I'd rather you use your body to please women, or even men, in the future than go to school"? And the reason being, simply that she couldn't bear the thought of this student girl who had suddenly appeared loving him more than she did. She couldn't do it. Hearing Isabella's words, Vivian was so overjoyed she nearly burst into tears. She hugged Ethan tightly. "Did you hear that?" Muffled against her chest, Ethan's voice was thick. "I heard." Now that something he had been hoping for years was finally happening, his reaction was surprisingly subdued. Perhaps he couldn't bear to see his mother so broken. Perhaps he couldn't comfortably face the softness pressing against his face. "I'll pay for Ethan's tuition. If it's not enough, please lend us the money for now," Isabella said, her voice soft and emotionless. "Any situation that requires a parent, you will handle. Since he's going to study, he should study well." After a moment, she added, as if to herself, "I want him to be happy too, even if I've never been able to make him so." Although Isabella had relented, getting Ethan into school was still a huge problem for Vivian. Ethan was 12 years old and had never been to school. Was he supposed to start from first grade or even kindergarten? Vivian couldn't bear the thought of Ethan facing questions like, "Why are you only starting school now? Are you so dumb that you kept getting held back?" After careful consideration, Vivian decided to aim for 6th grade. Ethan had a late birthday, so he would be about the same age as most of his classmates. But just deciding on a grade level was only the beginning. Although Ethan was smart, he had never studied before. If he went straight into 6th grade, he might not be able to keep up. Vivian had already asked her family for help with Ethan's situation. She spared no expense, hiring the best tutors she knew for English and math, while she taught him literature. Julian Shaw, a romantic art student, was also fond of Vivian and would come to teach Ethan singing and drawing. The workload was heavy. Even Vivian worried for Ethan as she watched him study around the clock. But the person who felt the least tired was Ethan himself, who was completely absorbed in his studies. This was the turning point in his life, and he was determined to seize it with all his might. Ethan was a quick and eager learner. After more than a month, he was able to score a 90 on the entrance exam for his chosen school. In individual subject tests, he was getting closer and closer to a perfect score. Vivian was very pleased. "Vivian, I don't think studying is that hard," Ethan said, tidying up the stack of books and papers on his small desk. "Let me go to school now. I can definitely do it." Unbeknownst to him, a new desire had taken root in his heart. He wanted to study hard and quickly catch up to Vivian and Julian. Vivian was the kindest sister to him, and Julian was living the kind of carefree life he most admired. "From the looks of it, your written exams should be fine, but what about the interview?" Vivian asked worriedly. "Vivian, I can do it," Ethan promised, patting his chest. The brilliant light in his eyes was so dazzling that she was almost mesmerized. On an impulse, she nodded. Then, feeling a pang of fear, she began to lecture him with a litany of reminders. She knew that no matter how well-behaved and motivated he seemed here, at his core, he was a stubborn child who had never known the sun. If he could get along with his classmates in school, that would be fine. But if conflicts arose, she didn't dare to think about it. He listened intently, wishing he could memorize her every word. On the day of Ethan's interview, Vivian took the day off, and Julian went with her. They waited outside the principal's office, occasionally exchanging glances but not daring to say much. Vivian had lived a charmed life until now and had never been so nervous. All for Ethan. In a daze, she realized that from the moment she met Ethan, she had lost control of her life's direction. Noticing the fine beads of sweat on her forehead, Julian took her hand and was not surprised to feel her trembling. Julian knew how much Vivian had sacrificed to get Ethan into school. At first, he hadn't really understood her actions until he learned about Ethan's life. Because he felt a similar sympathy for the boy, he too did everything he could to guide him onto the right path. The educational environment in Seaport City was competitive. Vivian had begged many people, many times, just to get this one chance. He truly understood her. Without saying much, Julian squeezed her hand, silently telling her, "I'm here." Feeling the rough texture of his hand against hers, she turned and looked at him gratefully. She had wanted to start dating, and between Spencer and Julian, she had chosen Julian. Because he was romantic, brave, and had moved her in just the right way. Whether he was teaching Ethan to draw, sing, or write calligraphy, or now, just sitting with her in silent companionship, he had far exceeded her expectations. Suddenly, she felt like she was truly in love. The ornately carved wooden door finally opened. Vivian instantly pulled her hand away and eagerly asked the principal who was walking toward them, "Principal Palmer, how did it go? Is my child okay?" Julian stared at his suddenly empty palm, momentarily stunned. Principal Palmer smiled kindly and patted Ethan's shoulder. "This child is very smart. But what?" Vivian interrupted anxiously. "But once he's in our school, he'll have to study hard," Principal Palmer said, changing his tone. In that instant, it felt as if fireworks were exploding in her chest. The moment she had been waiting for had finally arrived, and she didn't know how to react. Her eyes misty, she looked at Ethan, letting the fireworks in her heart bloom one after another. So brilliant, so enchanting, so wonderful. Seeing Vivian's emotional state, Julian tactfully put his arm around Ethan's shoulder and said, "Principal Palmer, thank you so much, don't worry. Our Ethan won't let you or the school down." Ethan nodded along, his eyes shining with eagerness. Principal Palmer encouraged Ethan again, then looked at Vivian and Julian. "You two should celebrate tonight. He can come in to register tomorrow morning. I have a teacher's seminar to attend, so I won't be able to host you." Vivian, as if waking from a dream, pushed Ethan's head down and bowed in thanks to Principal Palmer. That day, the sun was just right. The willows brushed against the clear, green lake, and as they walked along the cobblestone path, the air was filled with the faint scent of osmanthus. The young boy remembered it all. It was only after he grew up that he suddenly forgot everything. When he first started school, Ethan buried himself in his studies, afraid his grades wouldn't be worthy of Vivian's efforts. He naturally didn't have time to make friends with his classmates. He occasionally faced some ridicule and ostracism, but his good looks earned him a fair amount of special treatment. Vivian and Julian's relationship progressed steadily. After helping her with Ethan's school enrollment, Julian encountered a major turning point in his life. The art school he had always dreamed of extended an olive branch to him. The condition was that he had to create a collection of works worthy of an exhibition. As a child, when choosing a symbolic object for his future, Julian had picked a paintbrush. His family had cultivated his talent, and he had studied everything from ink wash and gouache to oil painting and sketching since he was young. His favorite was oil painting. Over the past decade, he had created some acclaimed works, but holding a solo exhibition like a famous artist was a monumental task. But he didn't want to give up. Not wanting to worry Vivian unnecessarily, he didn't tell her about the pressure he was under, using a full class schedule as an excuse to see her less. Vivian had started dating to suppress the budding feelings in her heart. Julian was a good person, so she didn't push him, focusing instead on her studies and part-time jobs. Although her parents were covering Ethan's expenses for the rest of his life, she hoped to take over that responsibility as soon as possible. Winter arrived quickly, and Christmas Eve came quietly. Julian was holed up in his studio, and Vivian was busy working, the sound of a door opening. Brilliant light flooded the dim studio. Julian instinctively shielded his eyes, then looked toward the door, annoyed. "Who is it?" The light outlined the face of his mentor, Professor Irving, whose kind eyes and gentle features reflected a lifetime of wisdom and calm. "Professor?" Julian's anger dissipated. Professor Irving walked steadily to the easel, his gaze sweeping over Julian's landscape painting. "Julian, you need to rest when you need to rest. You're not in the right headspace lately. Forcing yourself to paint won't do any good. You're my most talented student, don't doubt yourself." It was true. He had been in seclusion for a week and hadn't finished a single painting. His work was fragmented, the colors chaotic. It was worse than his work from years ago. Professor Irving gently patted Julian's shoulder. "Take a few days off." "But," Julian gripped his paintbrush, his knuckles turning white. "Julian, you've won many awards and you're considered a young artist now, but I know your ambitions go far beyond that. Julian, as long as you're on the path of painting, you can't push yourself like this. The most important thing for an artist is their work. Are you not going to listen to me?" Julian finally put down his paintbrush, put on his coat, wrapped a scarf around his neck, and went to find Vivian. The wind was biting cold, but the streets were crowded and brightly lit. Vivian stood on the street corner, hawking her beautifully packaged apples and bouquets. A soft halo of light surrounded her. Just as the wind picked up, she stopped calling out to customers, rubbed her hands together, and blew on them. Julian stood about 6 feet away, just watching her. In a daze, he remembered the first time he saw her. On the maple leaf-strewn campus, she had suddenly walked into the frame of his canvas. Perhaps warmed up, Vivian started calling out again. Julian's eyes filled with tenderness. Perhaps I was always destined to like her. There was no escaping it. He had been so tense lately that he had almost forgotten about this wonderful, caring girlfriend he had worked so hard to win over. Vivian! He cleared his throat, his smile as bright as the sun. Ah, she looked up sharply, and a sweet dimple appeared when she saw him. You're here. Julian walked closer, opened his coat, and wrapped her in a tight embrace. You're frozen solid, and you're still not resting. You little money grubber. Enveloped in warmth, she smiled, her eyes crinkling. What are you doing here? It's Christmas Eve. He rested his chin on her hair and whispered, I missed you. Her heart softened. She nuzzled against his chest. Wait for me to close up shop and I'll treat you to a big dinner. Are you sure you can afford it? He teased. Of course, I'm not a cheapskate, Vivian mumbled. She was just working desperately hard. After warming up a bit, she pushed Julian away. I need to sell a little more. I've only just broken even. He was reluctant to let go of his soft, warm girlfriend. Vivian, you don't have to work so hard. I'm going to be a famous painter one day. I'll support you. I believe you can when you're famous. If you don't support me, I'll go and slander you, she said playfully. I'm earning money for Ethan's tuition. You can't be expected to support Ethan too, can you? Hearing Vivian refer to Ethan as her responsibility, Julian felt a pang of discomfort. At first, Julian had liked him, but he hadn't reached the point where he could accept his girlfriend treating Ethan like her own son. Letting go of Vivian, Julian asked, Vivian, Ethan is young now, so I can help with his tuition and you can work for him. But what about later? Are you going to be responsible for the rest of his life? Vivian instinctively took a half step back and looked at Julian in confusion. What kind of question is that? Vivian, Ethan has a mother. Helping him is a kindness, not an obligation. Julian was being unusually serious. Vivian didn't want to argue with him. She made a fist and lightly punched his arm. You're a great artist. You don't need to think about such practical problems. Don't worry, I'll handle everything. In the future, our Julian just needs to focus on painting masterpieces that will last forever. Helpless against her, Julian pinched her red nose. I'll help you sell. Vivian felt an inexplicable sense of relief. Thankfully, Julian wasn't a petty person. Julian was handsome. Just by standing there, his long, straight legs attracted a lot of attention. After he started calling out, many girls came to buy apples, and some even bought flowers on the spot to give to him. Mission accomplished. Julian brushed off some fallen flower petals. Can you treat me to that big dinner now? Vivian was touched. She suddenly stood on her tiptoes and lightly kissed his cheek. It was cold, but it filled her with an endless warmth. The soft, fleeting touch stunned Julian. A moment later, he reacted, cupping the back of her head and aiming for her offending lips. Just as their lips were about to touch, Vivian's phone rang. Startled, she quickly pushed him away, blushing and mumbling an apology as she frantically answered her phone. Hello, Vivian, it's me. My little wanderer, Vivian's voice softened. What's wrong? Ethan's voice was choked with tears. Vivian. I's my mom, Her heart leaped into her throat. Ethan, what's wrong? Speak slowly. I'm here. On the other end, Ethan was evasive and sobbing, unable to articulate what was wrong. Vivian practically blurted out, Don't be scared, I'm coming right now. Only then did Ethan manage a soft okay. After hanging up, she looked at Julian apologetically. Julian, I'll treat you next time, okay? Having overheard the conversation, Julian suddenly felt that he and Ethan knew two different Vivians. He asked helplessly, You've already made your decision, haven't you? She jumped up, wanting to ask him what he meant. Unexpectedly, he moved away and her lips brushed against his earlobe. Barely steadying herself, Vivian was confused. Julian, something's happened at Ethan's house. I have to go. This was what Julian heard most often when they were on a date. No matter how carefree he was still a young man full of passion. She was his girlfriend. Vivian, he looked at her deeply. Count how many times we've been on a date and you've left early because of Ethan. I'm really not being petty. I know Ethan's situation, and I helped you get him into school. But now, we haven't seen each other in a long time, we were about to kiss, we were about to have a big dinner, maybe I had a surprise for you and was going to propose. But you, because of Ethan, are ending our date. I love you, but I can't be expected to love Ethan as well. Vivian's lips parted, but she couldn't say anything. She had never thought that Julian would remember all of this. Now that he brought it up, she realized she hadn't been a very good girlfriend. Next time, she explained, flustered. Ethan, he's really? He placed his palm on her cheek, his thumb gently caressing her skin. His eyes were still gentle. Vivian, don't panic. I just have one question for you. Do you really love me? I do. Vivian took a deep breath. Didn't I say I was waiting for you to become a famous painter and support me? Julian pulled his hand back. Then go. If she loves me one day, Ethan will grow up, and she won't put him first anymore. Although she wouldn't admit it, Julian could feel it. She felt something was off, but she was afraid of wasting too much time. She gave Julian a quick hug and rushed back to the alley. Knock, knock, knock. As soon as she reached Ethan's house, she started pounding on the door without even catching her breath. Ethan, are you there? She coughed. I'm here. No response. Fearing her knocks were too quiet, she hit the door harder. Ethan, what's wrong? It was cold, and soon her palms were both numb and chilled. Only then was she sure no one was inside. No, not necessarily. It was possible Isabella was entertaining a client and was pretending not to hear. It was also possible that Ethan had fainted. She shook her head repeatedly, muttering, "Why am I thinking such terrible things? Nothing will happen to Ethan." Overcome with anxiety, Vivian went around to the window, trying to figure out how to pry it open. Ethan, who had been watching from the shadows, finally ran out. "My little wanderer, are you okay?" Vivian ran over, cupped his face in her hands, and pinched and prodded him. "Did anyone hit you?" Ethan let her manhandle him. "No." "Then why were you crying?" Vivian's thumb swiped under his eye, but she didn't feel any tears. This time, she finally relaxed. Ethan threw himself into her arms and nuzzled against her chest, making up a lie. "Today, I wanted my mom to spend time with me, but she yelled at me and left. She's going to be with another man again. Aren't you paying for my tuition? Why can't she just spend some time with me?" Vivian's heart ached. She rubbed the back of his head, the short stubble tickling her palm. "Silly child, your mom may not say it, but she really cares about you. She's definitely happy that you're in school. She's working even harder now because she wants to be able to support you herself." It never occurred to her to wonder why the Ethan on the phone had been crying too hard to speak, while the Ethan in her arms was now able to whine to her about such common grievances. "Vivian, I'm hungry. Can you make me noodles?" After soaking up her warmth, he pleaded pitifully again. How could Vivian refuse? Leading him back to her place, she sat him on the bed and watched him go into the kitchen. Only after she closed the door did a hint of darkness cross his face. As time went on, Ethan had come to see Vivian as his personal property. Before, he had nothing to cling to and had relied on Isabella. Then, Vivian appeared. She was gentle, soft-hearted, beautiful, and she valued him. His time was mostly spent studying and seeing Vivian. When she was working at her stall, he would secretly follow her and help her attract customers. But then, Julian appeared. He used to like Julian, used to want to be like him. But when he saw Julian kiss Vivian, and imagined Vivian and Julian doing the things his mother did with those men, he stopped liking Julian. So, he called her, pretended to cry, and lured her back. The good thing was, Vivian cared more about him. Even though his lies were full of holes, she didn't doubt him. She just comforted him and stayed with him. Right now, she was making him noodles. She was his. Even if she wasn't now, she would be in the future. Definitely. Bringing out the steaming noodles, Vivian met Ethan's gloomy gaze. "Ethan, what's wrong? Are you still sad?" Ethan quickly smiled at her, revealing his neat teeth. "Vivian, as long as you're here, I'm not sad." Clearing a space on the table, he asked carefully, his voice full of hope, "Vivian, you won't abandon me like my mother did, will you?" In a flash, she remembered Julian's question. It was true. She could care for Ethan, but she couldn't expect Julian to do the same. When Ethan grew up, he would have his own life. Legally, he was Isabella's son. Their bond shouldn't last a lifetime. Seeing the hope in his eyes, for the first time, she wanted to avoid his gaze. But in the end, she looked straight at him. "I won't." She couldn't bear to refuse this child. He was too pitiful. His life was something she had never encountered before, and it just so happened to be him. Ethan's face broke into a wide grin. He stirred the tomato and egg noodles with his chopsticks. Then, I can eat the noodles Vivian makes forever. Eat slowly, don't burn yourself. She sat across from him, resting her chin on her hand and watching him. 6 years later, the art exhibition, themed Late Spring, came to a successful conclusion. After 4 years of hard work, Julian Shaw had finally taken the first step toward his dream. Vivian, who knew best how difficult his journey had been, invited him to an expensive Western restaurant to celebrate. "Are you treating me?" Julian's features had matured, but he still had the carefree air of an artist. Vivian playfully bumped his chest, her eyes crinkling with a smile. Of course. Ethan was a diligent student, had earned scholarships all through high school, and now didn't need her help with his university tuition. Isabella had worked tirelessly for a few years and had saved up a considerable sum, which she insisted on giving to Vivian, saying she owed her. In truth, Vivian had never intended to take Isabella's money. All those years ago, she had simply hoped to bring a little light to a child trapped in darkness. But she had wounded Isabella's pride as a mother, so she accepted the money. Now Ethan was also independent and didn't want her money. She decided to save it and give it to him as a wedding gift in the future. Plus, she had found a job and was no longer struggling to make ends meet. Perhaps it was just for fun, but Julian still liked to tease her. Julian put his arm around her shoulder, his smile unrestrained. "Let's go, I'm ready for my big dinner," Vivian scoffed. Who would believe that the famous, individualistic young painter is really like this? He didn't argue, just kissed her earlobe. Her face instantly flushed red. She pushed him away, quickened her pace, and walked far ahead of him. He curled his fingers, then strode to catch up with her. After all these years, she still got shy so easily. So cute! To the gentle melody of a piano, Julian watched with amusement as she ate her dessert, one spoonful at a time. When Vivian noticed, she tapped his plate with her small spoon and said playfully, "What, does the food in my mouth look better than what's on your plate? Vivian, will you marry me?" He seemed not to have heard her question, suddenly proposing. "What?" At the same time, the small spoon clattered onto the table. He took her trembling hand and repeated seriously, "Vivian, will you marry me?" Her lips trembled. "Is this how you propose?" He let go of her hand, pulled out the pocket watch he wore around his neck, and took out the diamond ring hidden inside. "Vivian, I bought this ring when I wrote you that first love letter," Julian said. "At first, it was just a crush, but there's something magical about you. The more I got to know you, the more I liked you. I believe I will never meet a better wife than you. This exhibition is just the beginning for me. But I can't wait any longer. I have to propose to you. I think I can finally fulfill my promise to support you for the rest of your life." Julian's family was well off. From now on, he wouldn't be short of money he earned himself. Her eyes welled up with tears. "Julian, 6 years. They had spent their best years together. Even if they didn't see each other often, they provided each other with a great deal of emotional support. Of course, she liked him. And she believed she would never meet a better husband. "I'm not good enough for you," she said, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. "But I want to marry you." Julian was ecstatic. He kissed the diamond ring, his hands trembling as he slipped it onto her finger. Then he grabbed her hand and kissed it again and again, as happy as a child. Under the beautiful moonlight, he walked her home, his mind filled with new thoughts. The exhibition was a success. He could take a break for a while. Halfway there, Vivian suddenly slapped her forehead. "Oh, I forgot. My little wanderer is waiting for me to bring him a blanket." Julian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Ethan's a grown man. Does he still need you for something like that?" "Now that he's grown up, I can't help him with much anymore." "It's only these little things," she said. "Don't be mad. See, I was so focused on you that I completely forgot." That was what truly pleased Julian. "I'll take you there," he said. Vivian didn't refuse this time. "Okay, my fiancé." By the time they reached the university, it was already 10 o'clock at night. The security guard recognized Vivian and let her in without much fuss. And Ethan, that stubborn mule, was still waiting for her. "Vivian, you're here." Seeing Vivian carrying a blanket from a distance, Ethan greeted her happily. Finding the blanket heavy, Vivian ran the last few steps, tossed it onto his bed, and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "Honestly, you didn't even call to remind me. You just waited. Weren't you afraid I'd forget?" He was about to say he wasn't worried, but then he saw the diamond ring on her ring finger and his face instantly darkened. Noticing his sullen expression, she asked with a smile, "What? Are you really mad? You're so handsome, it's a shame to always be scowling." "Vivian, your ring?" He squeezed the words out from between his teeth. Vivian instinctively touched the ring. "Julian proposed to me." "You're getting a brother-in-law. You said yes." He asked, clenching his jaw so hard his gums ached. She was amused. "You silly child, have you studied so much your brain has turned to mush? If I hadn't said yes, why would I be telling you you're getting a brother-in-law?" A surge of rage consumed him. Fearing he would lose control, Ethan pushed her out of the dorm room while he still had a shred of reason and locked the door. He had waited for so many years, hoped for so many years, planned for so many years. And before he was strong enough, she was going to marry Julian Shaw. Why couldn't she wait for him? His feelings for her, after a tumultuous high school, had been fully confirmed. He wanted to marry her. He loved her. If not, she wouldn't be the only one in his every wet dream. If not, he wouldn't be this angry. Outside the door, Vivian was completely bewildered. "Ethan, what's wrong with you?" he replied sullenly. "I'm going to sleep." She had no choice but to leave. When she met up with Julian, she was still complaining. "Ethan seems to have grown up. He gets mad at me for no reason." "Of course he's grown up," Julian comforted her. When they got back to her place, Vivian put her hands on Julian's shoulders and gave him a lingering farewell kiss. You've been working so hard. Get some rest," she said, pecking his cheek again. "When you're done, we can talk more about the wedding." She wasn't sure when Julian would be busy again, so she didn't want to bother him. He tilted her chin up and kissed her again, hard, until her cheeks were flushed. "You too," he panted. "Get some rest. You're so thin, you need to eat more." "Are you trying to fat me up like a pig?" she retorted. He pinched her waist. "Pigs are thinner than you." They flirted for a few more minutes, but she was really tired, so she finally went upstairs. Her financial situation had improved, and she had moved out of that small alley. As soon as she entered her apartment, she went straight to her bedroom, her mind alternating between Julian's proposal and his kiss. Suddenly, she thought of Ethan's abrupt change in mood. Was it just puberty, or was it? Connecting it to some long-suppressed, distant emotions, she suddenly shivered. Impossible. Knock, knock, knock. A series of urgent, rhythmic knocks on the door suddenly pulled her from her thoughts. Fighting a wave of nausea, Vivian opened the door, only to be confronted by a red-eyed Ethan Vance. She had never seen him look like this before. Dark, furious, on the verge of exploding. Even as a child, he had never been this volatile. "My little wanderer." His palm pressed against the small of her back. Before she could push him away, his scorching lips were on hers. He bit at her lips, swallowing her cries for help, and used his brute force to pin her against the back of the door, slamming it shut with a clang. The young, savage kiss was filled with an overflowing passion and desire, clumsy and rough. Her struggles were futile. Vivian's arms fell limply to her sides, unable to believe that the boy assaulting her was the same one she had watched grow up. She hadn't expected him to be so bold. She cried out in pain, and Ethan took the opportunity to demand more. It was an innocent, fierce, and intense kiss, completely different from Julian's gentle ones. She should have been disgusted, but she found her mind wandering. Once a sinful thought takes root, it's impossible to stop. It wasn't until she felt a mix of cold and heat on her shoulder that she realized Ethan was biting her, like a lost wolf cub. "Ethan Vance," she said, her voice hoarse. "What's wrong with you?" "Vivian, I won't let you marry Julian Shaw." His breath was hot on her collarbone. "I can marry you too. Wait for me, please." The answer wasn't unexpected, but it froze her. She would have preferred for Ethan to be heartbroken over someone else, or to be experimenting with her out of ignorance of matters of the heart. Like that time years ago. But he had bluntly confessed those dark emotions. The boy she had watched grow up, the boy she had worked so hard to put through school, the boy she had loved like a brother, was saying he wanted to marry her. Whether it was out of possessiveness or something else, it wasn't normal. "Ethan Vance," she clutched her clothes. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" "I know," he said, kissing the back of her hand. She pulled her hand away. "Ethan Vance, I'll call the police." He lightly bit her collarbone. "Vivian, you won't." "Ethan Vance, I'll hate you." He suddenly smiled, a soft, seductive curve of his lips, and reverently kissed the space above her heart. Vivian, you love me. As if sensing she was about to give in, he swept her up in his arms and laid her down on the sofa. In the dim yellow light, he looked at Vivian with a mix of wildness and triumph. I am your destiny. The words struck her soul, making her blush and lose herself in the moment. Vivian, don't marry him. I will love you. In this lifetime, no one will love you more than I do. She hadn't been drinking, but she was intoxicated by a wine that had been brewing for 6 years. And just like that, she made a great mistake. It looked like he had forced her, but he had been right. In the depths of her soul, perhaps she had desired him more. So she was this fickle, shameful woman. As Ethan slept soundly on her chest, her body ached, and she had no desire to shower or even to move her arm. Listening to his soft snores, she couldn't sleep. The feeling at that moment was absurd, yet mixed with the fulfilled expectation of finally. The coldness on her ring finger reminded her that just a few hours ago, she had accepted Julian Shaw's proposal. Why did she want to marry Julian, yet was unable to refuse Ethan? Perhaps she had always seen Julian as a safe harbor. How ridiculous she was. If Ethan hadn't done this, perhaps she really would have married Julian and buried the feelings that had sprouted 6 years ago forever. But her little wanderer had come for her. Perhaps her fate had been sealed from the moment he first rolled to a stop at her feet. Vivian's mind was in a whirl all night. At the first light of dawn, she slowly and unsteadily made her way to the bathroom, to wash away her sin. But she knew it couldn't be washed away. Wrapping a robe around herself, she looked at the haggard woman with dark circles under her eyes in the mirror and gave a self-loathing sneer. She splashed some water on her face and walked out of the bathroom to see Ethan sitting on the bed, staring at her blankly. He was probably still groggy from sleep, not yet remembering what he had done. Strictly speaking, she was the one at fault last night. Vivian! Ethan rubbed his heavy eyes. The memories of the last few hours flooded his mind. He felt a pang of regret, but also a secret thrill. She was his, she always had been. She definitely wouldn't marry Julian Shaw now. Ethan Vance, go back to school for now, okay? She said, feigning a casual tone as she opened her wardrobe and searched for clothes. Ethan watched her back, his mind replaying the events of last night, and desire began to stir within him again. Vivian, you're not going to marry Julian Shaw, are you? He pulled the blanket over his stomach, his face flushing a deep red. Vivian picked up a set of pajamas, untied her robe, and began to dress with her back to Ethan. No, I'm not, she replied nonchalantly. Her graceful figure, her slender waist, the taut line of her legs and hips as she bent over, every movement challenged Ethan's self-control. Though he understood such things, he had never casually dated like his roommates. In truth, he had been waiting for her too. So it wasn't too much to ask her to wait for him, was it? Vivian, don't worry, I'll take responsibility. A rush of hot-blooded courage surged through him. Forgetting his shyness, he rushed forward and wrapped his arms around her from behind. Julian is a good man, but I'll be better. You've been so good to me all these years. From now on, I'll be good to you until the day I die. The boy's confession was clumsy but moving. She didn't want to believe it, but she did. And in the end, she lost. Gently prying his arms apart, Vivian calmly buttoned her pajamas. Ethan Vance, be a good boy and go to class. Fear seized him, and he hugged her waist tightly again. What about you? He knew he had made a mistake. Last night, he had been consumed by rage, his mind filled with nothing but the need to possess Vivian to stop her from marrying Julian Shaw. Now, in the clear light of day, he was terrified of the consequences. He felt small and cowardly. I'm going to make things clear with Julian. Ethan keenly sensed that something about Vivian was different, though he couldn't put his finger on it. All he wanted to do was hold her, to stay with her day and night until she forgot Julian Shaw, forgot everything and everyone that stood between them. I'm going to make things clear with Julian. For him, those words were an irresistible temptation. Finally, he let her go. Still reluctant, he kissed the corner of her mouth appeasingly. Vivian, I'll wait for you. Okay. She turned around, her hands resting lightly on his neck as she slowly, gently kissed his chin, her lips gradually tracing the contours of his face. At the studio. As she had expected, Julian was there, his hair a messy mop, squeezing paints onto his palette. Julian, why aren't you resting? She bent down and took the paintbrush and palette from his hands. Julian ran a hand through his hair. The proposal was a success. I'm inspired, when he smiled, the beauty mark under his eye seemed to come alive, gently beckoning her. It was just like 6 years ago, when he had burst in with an armful of pink lilies to confess his love. She had been planning to start that whirlwind romance with Spencer, but by a strange twist of fate, it had been Julian. Her only regret was that, in the end, she still had to break his heart. Taking off the ring, she gently placed it in his palm. "Julian, I can't marry you." Julian's smile froze. "What did you say?" She straightened up, taking several steps back. "Julian, I've fallen in love with someone else. I can't marry you." He instinctively refuted her. "Impossible, even though we've been apart more than together these past 6 years. I know I'm the only one for you." Suddenly, Julian's eyes widened in horror. "Vivian, whatever you're thinking," she said, backing away until she hit the wall, the only place she felt a sliver of security. "I'm not worthy of you anymore." "Julian, I'm sorry. I wasted 6 years of your life." For 6 years, Vivian had been his companion, his muse, encouraging him through his setbacks. When he was busy, she never clung to him, always giving him space. She was more like a mentor and a friend than a lover, but he truly loved her. He couldn't accept this sudden turn of events. With a furious roar, he kicked over an easel. "Vivian, you're disgusting. You're in love with Ethan Vance. It was the same 6 years ago. You used me as a shield for your guilt. No wonder whenever we were on a date, you'd leave the moment he called all these years. You've always put him first. You're disgusting, utterly revolting. Did you really think I wanted to marry you? Dream on, get out, get the hell out." The deeper the love, the greater the resentment. He wanted to hurt her with the most vicious words he could find. Listening to his tirade, Vivian felt a strange sense of relief. "Julian, I'm sorry." The truth, the malicious assumptions, she accepted them all. "Get out." Still not satisfied, Ethan kicked a chair hard. Vivian fled in a panic. The studio was suffocating. Julian, who had been a source of warmth and beauty in her life, had become a scar she couldn't bear to face in less than a minute. She couldn't face Ethan either. She quit her job, sent Ethan a single text, "When you graduate, I'll marry you," and ran off to join a wilderness expedition team deep in the mountains. On one hand, Ethan was still young, and she didn't want to ruin him. On the other, she couldn't trust it, couldn't dare to. The moment Ethan saw Vivian's text, he immediately called her, only to be met with a cold, automated voice. "The number you have dialed has been switched off." He cut class and rushed to her apartment, but no one was there. Smashing a window and climbing inside, he was greeted by the sight of an empty wardrobe. "When you graduate, I'll marry you." It seemed to be the answer he wanted, yet it filled him with an endless sense of emptiness. And it was true. He couldn't find Vivian anywhere. He went to Julian's studio and got beaten up for his trouble. He searched her old family home from top to bottom. Finally, he had to accept it. He couldn't find her. Perhaps the only thing he could do was stay in Seaport City, graduate, and become a better man. And humbly hope that in the years to come, she wouldn't meet another Julian Shaw. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. Despite having worked countless part-time jobs, Vivian was, at her core, a pampered young woman. When she first went into the wild, she often couldn't keep food down, suffered from dry heaves, and battled high fevers and infections. Each time, it felt like she was losing half her life. By the time she was nothing but skin and bones, she had finally adapted to the harsh environment. Now, she could scale rock faces with ease, discovering secrets the team had overlooked. She had put on a little weight, and the color had returned to her cheeks. Late one night, by a riverbank, Vivian sat on a boulder, watching the team members cheerfully grilling fish. She wasn't very hungry. The mushroom soup she'd had that afternoon was still sustaining her. Then, a rare sound, her phone rang. She had only given this number to her parents. She took it out. Sure enough, it was her dad. Fearing something was wrong, she quickly answered. "Dad, Vivian, it's Isabella Sterling. She's passed away." Vivian froze. "Dad, what did you say?" "Isabella Sterling passed away. That boy Ethan is all alone now. It's so pitiful. You can focus on your career, but don't forget that you were the one who begged us to help him back then. Vivian, your father hopes you can come back." "Okay," clatter. The phone slipped from her hand and fell onto the pebbles. She sat in a daze for a few seconds as the smoky, fragrant smell of grilling fish wafted into her nose. Isabella was still young. How could she have died so suddenly? Was there an accident? Ethan, was he okay? After 2 years apart, she couldn't even imagine what he looked like now. Even though Ethan had acted as if he rejected Isabella, she knew it was just the disappointment of a love unrequited. Isabella may not have been a good mother, but she was the only mother he had. Ethan, he must be heartbroken. Jumping to her feet, Vivian pulled the team leader, Miles Morgan, aside. "Chief, I have to go back to Seaport City." Miles speared a piece of fish. "Want some?" She turned her face away. "Chief, I have to go back to Seaport City." "Try the fish." Miles waved the stick, popping the piece into Vivian's mouth before saying, "All right." The fish was scalding hot. Without savoring it, she swallowed it whole. "Thanks, Chief." Miles propped his right foot on a rock and put a hand on her shoulder. "Vivian, are you coming back?" In that instant, an image of Ethan flashed before her eyes, overcome with grief, but forcing himself not to cry. She couldn't bring herself to say, "Yes." Miles understood. He patted her on the back. "Go back and be the young lady you are. Don't stay out here and get yourself sick." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Chief, thank you." Despite Miles doing his best to make arrangements, she still missed Isabella's funeral. By the time she reached Seaport City, all she saw was Ethan, kneeling alone in the memorial hall. Seeing the black and white photo of a smiling Isabella, Vivian was filled with 1,000 emotions as she knelt and paid her respects according to custom. Ethan caught a glimpse of Vivian out of the corner of his eye, but showed no reaction. In the face of such immense sorrow, all joy was insignificant. "My little wanderer, I'm here for you." Vivian stayed kneeling and pulled him into her arms. "If you're sad, just cry, don't hold it in." Ethan remained motionless, his eyes fixed blankly on the photo of his mother, who was gone without any warning. Feeling his stiffness, she tightened her embrace, her voice choked with emotion. "My little wanderer, don't be like this, you're scaring me. I'm back. Don't you miss me?" "I'm here." Feeling the dampness on his neck, Ethan's eyes finally moved. It was as if he was only just realizing Vivian was back. The Vivian he had once wanted to possess was back. The Vivian whose wedding he had ruined was back. The person he wanted to grow up and marry had returned to his side. Vivian's embrace and her tears slowly pulled him back to the world of the living. Slowly, he raised his hands. He hesitated, recoiled, but finally he hugged her back. "Vivian." "Ethan, it's me." She sat up straight and cupped his face, her tear-filled eyes tracing his features. "Ethan, don't be sad. I'm still here. I'll be with you. Everything will be okay." "Vivian, will you really stay with me forever?" He wrapped his arms around her waist, afraid this real, warm presence would disappear. Maybe this was all just a hallucination. "I will." Her index finger traced his eyebrow as she choked back a sob. "My little wanderer, you've gotten even more handsome these past 2 years. Then, will you marry me?" Without a moment's thought, she agreed. After 6 years of suppression and 2 years of avoidance, she finally, irrevocably, chose this path. After Vivian jumped, Ethan stood half a meter away, paralyzed. Suddenly, memories of their past flooded his mind, and the overwhelming pain brought him to his knees. Without Vivian, he wouldn't have the life he had now. Without Vivian, he might have been beaten to death by one of his mother's clients. Without Vivian, he would never have had the chance to get an education, let alone stand tall and make his own choices. Without Vivian, how would he have ever had the chance to betray her? If he had known he would change his heart in just 4 short years, he would have rather let her marry Julian Shaw. Julian was now an increasingly famous artist, yet he had never dated again. He certainly wouldn't have thought she was old, wouldn't have been seduced by a younger, prettier girl, wouldn't have abandoned her, wouldn't have killed her. After the initial shock, he finally remembered that he was the one who had desperately begged her to marry him. She had never tied him down. Even when he brought Lydia Monroe home, she still left her inheritance to him. Even as she jumped, she said she didn't regret loving him. It wasn't to make him suffer for the rest of his life, but because it was the truth from her heart. Ethan had never felt such regret as he did in that moment for insisting on marrying Vivian all those years ago. How could someone like him, who grew up in the dark mire, whose flaws could never be washed clean, ever marry someone as warm and kind as Vivian? Ethan sat there, motionless, until night fell and a few scattered stars dotted his face. Then the sky began to pale, and the warm light of dawn fell on his shoulders. The sound of footsteps in the hallway reminded him that this was a hospital, and that the day before, Vivian had jumped out of the window and killed herself right in front of him. She was dead. Was Lydia Monroe, young, beautiful, with a soft waist and a sweet mouth, really that important? Was Vivian, who had spent the first half of her life loving and helping him, really no match for Lydia? Ethan Vance. In a daze, he thought it was Vivian calling him. He looked up, but it was Spencer Sullivan. The light in his eyes faded, and he lowered his head again, sinking back into the self-torturing memories of his life with Vivian. The most beautiful 6 years were when he studied desperately for her, and she worked desperately for him. Ethan Vance, Vivian isn't dead. Spencer's face was etched with fatigue. Ethan's head shot up, his eyes wide with disbelief. What did you say? Spencer loosened his tie. Vivian was saved. You can thank the hospital for its emergency measures, otherwise it would have been too late to even call the police. Struggling to his feet with brute force, Ethan rushed over to Spencer and grabbed his arm. You're not lying to me. Pulling his arm away, Spencer said, You think I want to tell you this. It was Vivian who was thinking of you. Although Vivian had been saved, her stomach cancer was beyond any miracle. He was afraid she would try something again, so he stayed by her side, forcing a smile when she was awake. But when she slept, she would call out Ethan's name, crying in agony. That was why Spencer had decided to tell Ethan that Vivian wasn't dead, that she still loved him. The girl he had liked in his youth ultimately belonged to another. He was lucky to have been a part of her life at all. Now, facing Ethan calmly, he had completely let go. Even the thought of replacing Ethan, of taking his place because Ethan had treated her poorly, was gone. Where is she? Ethan's eyes were bloodshot, yet filled with hope, just like the Ethan of his youth. Spencer told him. Ethan bolted from the room, frantically searching for her ward. But when he stood before the door, he didn't have the courage to push it open. Through the small glass window, he saw Vivian sitting on the bed, flipping through a magazine. It was as if he was only just now noticing that Vivian was so thin she was just a bag of bones, with hardly any flesh on her face and lips completely devoid of color. Did he dare go in and face the bloody reality of his sins? Stepping back, he let out a sudden, cold laugh. Perhaps he should just be with Lydia Monroe and then use the next Lydia to hurt this one. Having seen through his own nature, Ethan was filled with a profound disgust for his own life. A storm of complex emotions raged in his eyes. He suddenly lurched forward and threw the door open. Startled by the noise, Vivian looked up. When she saw it was Ethan Vance, a gentle look softened her eyes. Ethan Vance, she said, closing the magazine and forcing a smile. Don't worry, I'll be dead soon. If you want to marry Lydia Monroe, go ahead. You can be with whomever you want. My illness is my own business. You don't need to feel guilty. I'm not your wife anymore. And I was never your sister. For a full day and night, Ethan had been drowning in the grief of losing his beloved. 5 minutes ago, he had learned she was still alive. 30 seconds ago, he had been anxious about their reunion. 4 seconds ago, he had been contemplating suicide. None of those emotions hit him with the same suffocating force as that single sentence. It was like an invisible hand, gripping his throat, squeezing the air from his lungs. Vivian had just negated the past 12 years of their lives. Vivian, who had helped him, loved him, indulged him, treated him as her entire world, had just negated the past 12 years. Even though he was the first to forget, he couldn't bear her denial. Wiping away his tears, Ethan fell heavily to his knees. Vivian, I don't want you to die. I was wrong. Please, let me stay with you, okay? Whether it works or not, let's try the surgery, okay? Let's not give up, okay? When Isabella had died, she had led him out of despair. Now, he desperately hoped he could do the same for her. I'm not. Vivian was still gentle. Not by blood, not by law. Before you signed the papers, I was your wife. Now, I'm just an old, sick woman. I don't need your pity. Ethan Vance, go live your life. Shuffling closer on his knees, he grabbed her hand, crying, Vivian, let's do the surgery, please. Ethan Vance was a proud man who rarely cried. Vivian was surprised that he would show such raw emotion because of her. Perhaps he truly knew he was wrong, or maybe he was just genuinely guilty. She had never wanted any of that. Yanking her hand back forcefully, she said, Ethan Vance, are you really that selfish? You know there's no hope for me, yet you still want me to have surgery. Do you know how much it hurts? Do you know how hard it is for me to live another day in this body? What right do you have to call me your sister? You're not worthy. I'll find a way. He seemed blind to her coldness, scrambling to his feet and wiping his tears. Vivian, don't worry, I'll find a way. I won't let you be in pain, won't let you suffer. With that, he fled the room as if escaping. He truly lacked courage. A Vivian who was seemingly gentle, but in reality had excised him from her life, was more than he could handle. Spencer arrived late but had heard most of their conversation. After Ethan left, he walked into the room. "Vivian, why do you have to be like this?" Vivian went back to her magazine. "Do you really think I divorced him and left him my inheritance just because he cheated?" "You really are," Spencer shook his head, "beyond saving." She gave a wry smile. "I failed to die yesterday, but I'll be dead soon enough." This was all her karma. To satisfy her selfish desire to be with Ethan, she had hurt Julian. She had abused her body in the wilderness, and her secret marriage to him had given her father a heart attack. Ethan no longer loving her was her punishment. To love too much is to cause harm. "I won't let you die." A long, unheard voice made her look up in surprise. Her heart, which had been as still as a placid lake, rippled with faint waves. Ethan Vance burst into the study, pulling books off the shelf one by one and throwing them to the floor. In a fit of rage, he kicked over a bookcase. Not a single book held a cure for late-stage stomach cancer. Vivian was destined to leave him, and he would never find redemption again. Why was he such a terrible person? Kneeling on the floor, he didn't know what to do. 12 years ago, when no one cared about him, it was Vivian who went around begging people to give him a chance at an education. 6 years ago, Vivian could have married Julian Shaw, but he had forcibly destroyed that. 4 years ago, after his mother died, it was Vivian who gave him hope to live again. 2 years ago, when his ailing father-in-law died on the operating table, and his mother-in-law was hit by a car soon after in a daze of grief, she never once blamed him, bearing the sorrow alone. 6 months ago, when his business failed, she encouraged him to start over, even hiring someone to pose as an investor to protect his pride. A month ago, when she was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer, she wrote a will leaving everything to him. And he had cheated on her. The child she was carrying, he had personally fed her the pills that caused the miscarriage. She might have had a will to live, but he had personally snuffed it out. A pampered young woman, forced by him to jump out of a window to her death. It turned out that without Vivian, he was ultimately worthless. He just knelt there, thinking, turning the past over and over in his mind. The fact that she was alive was somehow more agonizing than if she were dead. Vivian's decisiveness had awakened his forgotten memories, awakened his deeply buried conscience, and, "Ethan Vance, what is wrong with you?" Lydia Monroe suddenly stormed in, furious. "Why aren't you answering my calls? Are you tired of me now that I'm pregnant? Couldn't you wait? Did you find someone else? If you keep this up, I'm going to get an abortion." He looked up and said earnestly, "Lydia Monroe, go get an abortion." Lydia was so angry she picked up a dictionary and threw it at his head. "Ethan Vance, what do you mean by that?" Thud. Ethan didn't flinch as blood immediately beaded on his forehead. "Lydia, when I was in debt and trapped, you ran away, didn't you?" A wave of guilt washed over her. She clenched her trembling hands. "What are you talking about? I'm not here to settle scores. You and I should both be clear that we were just playing around." Lydia couldn't catch her breath. She caressed her still, flat stomach. "Playing around? You didn't say we were playing around when you were getting me pregnant. Playing around when you brought me home to show up that frumpy old woman. Playing around when you divorced that frumpy old woman for me? Ethan Vance, what the hell do you mean, frumpy old woman?" Vivian was indeed not as beautiful as she used to be, but she was hardly a frumpy old woman. Why had he suddenly grown to resent her so much? Was it her constant compassion and help that had wounded his pitiful, fragile pride? "Ethan Vance, say something." Seeing him dazed, Lydia grabbed another book and threw it at his chest. Ethan took the hit squarely with a muffled grunt. "Lydia, let's break up. As for a breakup fee, tell me how much you want, and I'll do my best to give it to you." His business hadn't been doing well these past few years. Most of it was propped up by Vivian. He really didn't have much to give Lydia. Giving Lydia Vivian's money would probably just be another way of hurting her. "First you say we were just playing around, now you want to buy me off with money?" Lydia advanced on him, her anger growing as she looked at his indifferent expression. She had just raised her arm. "Ethan Vance, don't you believe that I love you? Can't you allow me to be a coward? Wasn't I willing to have your child?" In the end, she suppressed her anger. The hand that was about to slap him began to unbutton her clothes instead. 1 button, 2, 3. Shedding the last piece of fabric, Lydia Monroe knelt behind Ethan Vance, pressing her body flush against his back. Her slender fingers restlessly traced the lines of his waist. "Ethan, I can do this. Let's be good to each other, okay? You don't have to marry me, just love me. Ethan, don't I attract you anymore?" He grabbed her hand. "Lydia, do you really trust me?" "I do." Lydia broke free and fumbled for his belt buckle. When a woman uses her strength, even a metal buckle is no match. Ethan let her clumsy seduction continue. "Lydia, I was only attracted to your youth and beauty. When I said I loved you, it was a fleeting novelty, my heart was clouded, and I was trying to escape my wife." "Ex-wife," Lydia suddenly corrected him, her voice sharp with anger. A bitter curve formed on his lips. "Lydia, I want to tell you something. I will definitely change my mind again. I once loved Vivian far more deeply than I love you, but I still changed. I killed our child and nearly killed her." "Lydia, you still won't give up after hearing that?" "I'm carrying your child and you're telling me to give up?" Lydia stood up, roaring with rage. "You're a real piece of work, a scumbag with principles." Ethan picked up his belt. "I will do my best to compensate you." How could Lydia tolerate being abandoned like this? She slapped the belt out of his hand, threw herself at him, and kissed his lips fiercely. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't part his lips. When a man is heartless, a woman is no match for him. When he was in debt, she had run away in fear, while Vivian had found ways to help him get back on his feet. But what about her? The moment he said he wanted to break up, she was furious enough to explode, yet she still had to use her body to please him. The most hurtful part was his complete lack of response. If he loved her, he couldn't have stopped loving her in just 2 or 3 days. So, he had never truly loved her. This realization filled her with anger, sorrow, and a helpless yet frantic desire to salvage something, to prove something. She persisted in her attempts to please Ethan Vance. But the Ethan who had seduced her, who had been infatuated with her, had changed his mind just like that. His love was gone. As she used every trick in the book to arouse him, he suddenly said, "Lydia, my mother was a prostitute." "Huh?" She looked up at him, her eyes were seductively silken, radiating a seductive charm. He was calm and composed. "Exactly what you think it is. Ever since I was a child, I watched a revolving door of men around her, all of them paying customers." "You," she finally understood. A knowing smile appeared on Ethan's face. "Even though you're desperately trying to prove I love you right now, the moment you hear about my mother's profession, you feel disgusted with me, don't you?" Lydia frantically denied it. "I don't." Pretending to be unfazed, she lowered her head again. "Vivian was never disgusted with me. The fact that I am where I am today is because she spoiled me. She was a good teacher, but I was a bad student." As Lydia took the lead, he recounted the past he had remembered after thinking Vivian had died. It wasn't just the 8 years they had supported each other, been drawn to each other, and finally gotten together. It was also the 4 years he had gradually lost his way, due to setbacks, repression, and his own character flaws. It wasn't exactly a sudden awakening. He had known all along. He had hurt her so deeply because he had naively thought that by pretending not to know, by breaking away from Vivian, he could have a different kind of carefree life that he had never possessed. "Are you sick?" Lydia finally couldn't take the humiliation anymore and slapped him hard across the face. Ethan didn't dodge it this time either. "I am sick." Vivian didn't hate him, but she kept her distance. It felt like she was slowly slicing his heart with tiny blades. It was torture. Lydia hitting and cursing him actually made him feel a little better. Like punching cotton, Lydia's anger couldn't be vented. She dressed herself through a stream of tears and snot, then angrily left the nightmarish study. She suddenly stopped in front of the garden and looked back at the second-floor window, as if she could see the lifeless, self-proclaimed repentant Ethan Vance inside. She cried, then laughed, then cried again. Lydia clenched her fists. She would not accept this. She would have this child, she would make Ethan Vance love her, and be responsible for the child for the rest of his life. Vivian never expected Julian Shaw to come see her. When she saw Julian, whom she hadn't seen in 6 years, her gaze instinctively softened. He was still handsome, and the beauty mark at the corner of his eye still seemed to speak. Perhaps because he was an artist, living in a romantic world of painting, he hadn't seemed to mature. He still had the air of a carefree young man. "How did you know I was sick?" It took Vivian a moment to recover. "You don't hate me anymore?" Julian and Vivian had been low-key, but in college, they had long topped the list of the campus's most well-matched couple. It had taken Spencer some time to get over his feelings for Vivian, so he knew Julian. Spencer could clearly sense that Vivian's attitude toward Julian was different. Regardless of why she had broken up with Julian to marry Ethan, he was sure that Julian might be able to heal Vivian. With a terrible ex-husband like Ethan as a precedent, Spencer saw every other man as radiating light. And feeling that Vivian and Julian had things to talk about, he made an excuse to go back to his law firm. Hearing the soft click of the door closing, Julian bent down, tucked a stray lock of her hair behind her ear. "Vivian, we haven't seen each other in years. You've lost weight." She gave a bitter smile. "How could I not, being this sick?" His fingertips brushed over her cheekbones, which were prominent from her weight loss. Julian said softly, "Is it really because of the illness?" Julian had rushed here, so he must have heard about her failed marriage. Vivian didn't shy away, her voice soft. "Julian, you're still angry with me." "Yes, I am. I've been angry with you for so many years." A flash of bitterness crossed Julian's eyes. "What kind of person are you, dating me for 6 years just to avoid loving Ethan Vance? You accepted my proposal, gave me immense hope, only to tell me the very next morning that you'd decided to love him after all. Even so, I've still missed you all these years." "I'm sorry," Vivian said, lowering her head. "But Julian, you shouldn't miss me. Your life is just beginning. You should find someone to share it with." Julian sat on the chair by her bed, picked up the magazine from under her hand, and flipped through a few pages nonchalantly. "Don't worry, I will. I've actually dated someone, a fellow artist, young and beautiful. It's just that I'm not a celebrity, so I wouldn't announce my relationship status." As if a weight had been lifted, she met his gaze. "You wouldn't lie to me?" "Of course not." He ruffled the top of her head. "Vivian, let me take you abroad, okay?" A ripple of emotion stirred in her eyes. She asked in surprise, "What?" "The hospitals here have given you a death sentence. Instead of waiting here, why not try going abroad with me?" Julian urged her sincerely. In reality, he just wanted to be with Vivian for the short time she had left. "Abroad?" Vivian drew out the word, lost in thought. She didn't want Ethan's pity. Dying in some unknown small town abroad might be a better choice. Although Julian was a romantic and unconventional painter, she trusted him to handle her final affairs. Julian took her hand and enveloped it in his. "Vivian, you owe me a wedding. You can't crush my hopes again." "Okay, I promise you." After a brief pause, she said, "Julian, you have to promise me something too. When I die, you have to bring me back home." "I hope that day never comes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Feeling the warmth of his palm, she was suddenly struck by the bitter reality of her impending death. "I don't even know," she said dejectedly, "if I'll make it long enough to go abroad." She didn't know how long the paperwork would take, but she could clearly feel the flame of her life flickering out. "Vivian, my dear classmate, I brought you a gift." Julian suddenly stood up, a wide smile revealing his neat, white teeth. She leaned back against the pillow, her gaze as gentle as water. "What is it?" He pulled a scroll from his bag, held it high, and slowly unfurled it. The first thing that caught Vivian's eye was a background of varying shades of pink. With just one glance, she could guess what he had painted. Sure enough, as the scroll was fully revealed, it showed the backs of 2 lovers holding hands, with a line of beautiful cursive on the left. "If I can, I want to walk with you through this long life." Julian's eyes shone, with the same light as years ago. "Vivian, my dear classmate, may I have the honor of accompanying you for the rest of your time?" Tears welled up in her eyes. Through the misty view, she seemed to see the day she had hesitated over which love letter to choose. Crash, a boy holding a bouquet of light pink stargazers stumbled into the classroom, crashing into her life. She heard the boy's shy voice in her ear. "Vivian, I like you. Can you be with me?" She had said yes, but she had still let him down. Perhaps her life had been too fortunate. From birth, she was the cherished daughter of loving parents. When she wanted to fall in love, she met Julian and Spencer. That must be why she met Ethan Vance. The moment she decided to be with Ethan, her father fell gravely ill. Not long after, she lost both her parents, left with an endless inheritance. To escape Ethan, she sought survival in the wilderness, only to return with a body full of illness. Because she loved Ethan too much, she didn't know how to manage a marriage, and in the end, she even lost his love. Thankfully, at the end, Julian no longer blamed her and was willing to take her abroad to find hope. "Julian, take me away." As the overlapping shadows of the past cleared, she saw the 30-year-old Julian clearly again. Julian was deeply moved. He carelessly placed the painting on the cabinet and pulled her into a fierce hug. "Okay, Vivian, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let you go back then." But then he thought, she loved Ethan Vance so unconditionally, and Ethan loved her back just as fiercely. How could he have separated them back then? The procedures for going abroad were not difficult, and Julian, for the first time, pulled some strings and got everything done in 3 days. Before they left, Julian went to Vivian's villa. Their flight was tomorrow. When Vivian was awake, she seemed completely normal, but in her sleep, she only called out Ethan's name. Ethan Vance was her unresolved issue, and his as well. That's why he had to make this trip. The ornate iron gate was wide open. The flowers and trees in the courtyard were overgrown, a sign of neglect. As he changed his shoes in the entryway, he noticed a layer of dust on the shoe cabinet. Indeed, the more exquisite something is, the more care it needs, otherwise it easily gathers dust. Weren't Ethan and Vivian just as exquisite? The living room, kitchen, dining room, and storage room were all empty. Julian went up to the second floor, saw the study door wide open, and walked straight in. Amidst a pile of scattered books, Ethan was kneeling, his clothes wrinkled, his hair a mess, and a dark stubble covering his chin. "Ethan Vance, I saw you 2 days ago, but I didn't tell Vivian." Julian bent down, picked up a copy of A Murder is Announced from the floor, and placed it back on the shelf. Ethan didn't seem to hear him, remaining completely still. Yes, he had wanted to be with Vivian, but then he saw Julian holding her. If Julian could make Vivian happy, what was the point of his insistence? Vivian's best 12 years had been given to him. Since he didn't know how to cherish them, what right did he have to fight for her now? Julian methodically straightened the books. "Because you always give up on her so easily. You've been married for less time than you've known her, and you've already made such a mess. You saw me just once and decided to make a grand, merciful exit?" Ethan's eyes flickered. "She was willing to hug you, but not me." Kicking aside a book near Ethan's knee, Julian grabbed him by the collar. "And do you know why?" Ethan was lifeless. "Maybe I know, maybe I don't." Julian punched him hard in the cheekbone. Stop playing dumb. As if he had lost all his senses, Ethan numbly endured Julian's punches and rage. "This punch is for Vivian. These are for me. If it weren't for Ethan, the beginning and duration of his love with Vivian would have been purer. If it weren't for Ethan, their love would never have ended. If it weren't for Ethan, he wouldn't have to deceive himself by taking a terminally ill, emaciated Vivian abroad." Cough. Ethan suddenly coughed up blood, spattering a thick English-Chinese dictionary. For the past few days, Ethan hadn't eaten, drunk, or slept, surviving on sheer willpower. Now, beaten by Julian, his body finally gave out. Fearing he had actually killed Ethan, Julian hoisted his arm over his shoulder, dragged him out of the villa, and shoved him into the back seat of his car. Slamming the door shut, Julian got into the driver's seat and drove to the nearest hospital. Ethan's external injuries weren't serious, but he was severely malnourished. The nurse chattered incessantly as she treated his wounds. "You young people these days, always getting into fights, thinking you're invincible. How can you treat your bodies like this?" She only stopped after she had inserted the IV needle into Ethan's arm and given Julian instructions on the infusion. Julian smiled appropriately. "Thank you for your hard work." Once the room was quiet again, Julian looked at Ethan. "Ethan Vance, I won't hit you again. We're even." In fact, Julian, having navigated the art world, had often encountered petty people who tried to make things difficult for him. He had long since learned to face them calmly. No matter how he handled it, he could always maintain his composure. Only with Ethan Vance he couldn't. But now, seeing him with his head bandaged, eyes closed, pathetically receiving an IV drip, Julian had regained his usual demeanor. "If you're going to let go, then don't regret it." "What do you mean?" "I'm taking Vivian abroad. We leave tomorrow. I hope you can see her off. Even though I don't want to admit it, the truth is she can't let you go. I want her to leave without any regrets." "How is that possible?" Ethan scoffed. "Whose life is without regrets?" Julian said. "Maybe if she hadn't met you, Vivian's could have been." Ethan Vance was speechless. After a long silence, "You guys go," Ethan said, staring at the needle in his vein. Maybe if I hadn't cheated, she could have survived. Now, whatever you do, I have no right to say anything. You're finally clear-headed for once. Julian couldn't be bothered to face Ethan anymore. After paying the medical bills, he left to find Vivian. In the empty hospital room, Ethan listened to the drip, drip, drip of the IV and to two frantic voices arguing in his head. Go to her. Keep her by your side like a caged bird. She's yours from beginning to end. Don't let anyone else take her away. Only you can hurt her, only you can comfort her. No matter how old or ugly she gets, only you can look at her, she belongs only to you. Forget her. Let her go abroad with Julian. Let her live however long she has left. You have money now, you're free. It's good that you're done with Lydia. You can find different women, so you'll never lack for novelty. You can start a new business, with no one to sway your decisions anymore. You're free. The ringing of his phone shattered his thoughts. He saw Lydia Monroe on the caller ID and swiped to reject. She was relentless. After the 10th rejection, Lydia sent a text. If you don't answer, I'll make Vivian die right now. Ethan lost his composure and immediately called Lydia. Are you insane? Lydia tightened her grip on Vivian's neck, enjoying the cool rooftop breeze. I'm not insane, not as insane as you. If you don't want Vivian to die, then come and find me. Where are you? At the hospital you've been wanting to come to, but haven't dared. Ethan gritted his teeth. Wait for me. Don't do anything stupid. Without waiting for her reply, he yanked the needle from his arm and ran out of the room. Lydia smiled sinisterly. I'll be waiting for you, that's the whole point. On the hospital rooftop, Vivian, unable to withstand the manhandling, was pale and weak. Lydia Monroe, I'm leaving with Julian tomorrow. Why are you doing this? Lydia was impatient. Shut up, coughing a few times, Vivian continued. You're pregnant. Kidnapping and murder will get you jail time. If you won't think about yourself, at least, think about the child. As she spoke, she remembered being forced by Lydia and Ethan to swallow the contraceptive pills, feeling the sharp pain as she clearly felt her child slipping away. She had never been able to have a child in this life. She had failed her parents, and she had failed herself. You'd better shut your mouth, Lydia threatened angrily. You think I don't know you're going abroad? You think I don't know I should be thinking about the child? But I can't accept this. You're just a dying, frumpy old woman, and I still lost to you, so what if you met Ethan first? You're still older than him. Vivian felt the pressure on her neck tightening, making it hard to breathe. Hearing her desperate gasps, Lydia became even more agitated. Ethan isn't here yet. You're not allowed to die. The suffocating grip on her neck loosened, but the suffocation inside her remained. She struggled to breathe. Lydia, I really don't have much time left. If you still like Ethan, don't make things so ugly between you. You're carrying his child after all. He won't abandon you. Lydia's eyes glazed over as she whispered, Really? Really? He divorced me for you. Now that I'm dying, as his ex-wife, he has to show some grief out of a sense of ethics, right? Time heals all wounds. After I'm gone, if you stay by his side, how can his heart not be filled with only you? Lydia was completely swayed. Her grip on Vivian's wrist loosened. Just then, Ethan burst through the locked door and into their sight. Lydia Monroe, you're insane. Hearing Ethan's voice, she instinctively tightened her grip on Vivian's hands and dragged her backward. Ethan Vance, don't come any closer or I'll jump with her. Have you lost your mind? Despite his anger, he stopped. Lydia, do you know the sentences for kidnapping and intentional injury? Lydia's eyes were red-rimmed. I know, I just want to make you miserable even if it costs me decades of my life. I want Vivian to die. Overwhelmed by emotion, Lydia's heel slipped off the edge, and she nearly fell backward. The sight terrified Ethan. As if he were reliving the moment he watched Vivian jump. He fell to his knees. Lydia, I was wrong, don't be angry, just take 2 steps forward. I won't fight you. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Please, just let Vivian live. Thud. The sound of Ethan kneeling sent shockwaves through Vivian's heart. The proud Ethan Vance was kneeling for her. The grown-up Ethan was arrogant, a product of extreme insecurity. He hated it when people brought up his past, disliked it when she pointed out his mistakes, and eventually refused to accept her help. She knew it wasn't healthy, but she would rather he live this defiant, self-centered life than return to the paranoid, insecure boy he once was. Would this act of kneeling shatter him and send him back to that state? Lydia was driven mad by the scene, teetering on the very edge. Ethan Vance, since you want Vivian to live so badly, then die for her as long as you jump. I'll let her go, we can both fulfill her wish. Let her go abroad with her true love, Julian Shaw, and live out her last days in happiness. Ethan didn't even have to think. You'll keep your word? Lydia gritted her teeth. I'll keep my word. She was unwilling to admit that Ethan's immediate willingness had pierced her heart. In that second, she finally understood how superficial his feelings for her were. I'll jump from here. Is that okay? Ethan climbed over the railing and looked back at Lydia, who was several meters away. No, Lydia and Vivian shouted in unison. Vivian had used so much strength that her chest ached and her throat burned. Seeing Ethan freeze, Vivian ignored the pain. Ethan Vance, I forgive you, don't die, live a good life, I'm begging you, live a good life. Ethan turned his body. In the northwest, Vivian, held captive by Lydia, was saying she forgave him, that she didn't want him to die. He could feel the pain it caused her to speak, yet she was still shouting with all her life for his sake. He seemed to see the Vivian who, terrified but determined, had negotiated with Isabella to get him into school. The Vivian who had gone around begging people so he could attend a good school. The Vivian who had agreed to marry him to help him out of the shadow of his mother's death. The Vivian who, even when she was about to lose everything because of him, still tried her best to be good to him. This Vivian, who had finally forgiven him. Lydia couldn't bear for Ethan to die, but she was unwilling to let him and Vivian have their moment. He was the one who had made her so pathetic. Love had finally turned to hate. Lydia pulled out a dagger she had prepared and threw it. The dagger traced a rainbow arc through the air before clattering to the ground in front of Ethan. Ethan snatched it up. Lydia, afraid a jump would be too bloody, you want me to kill myself with a dagger instead. Letting you die would be too easy, fearing Vivian would ruin her plans, Lydia tightened her grip on her neck again, preventing her from speaking. She had heard most of what he said when she tried to seduce him in the study. Ethan was riddled with guilt. He would be glad to die for Vivian. She wouldn't let him have that release she wanted him to suffer in this world, just like her. Flicking off the sheath, Ethan was as calm as someone ready to meet his death. What do you want me to do? Cripple your legs, Lydia shouted at him, simultaneously tightening her hold on Vivian's neck. No, Vivian couldn't speak, only shake her head frantically. But Ethan refused to receive her plea, listening only to Lydia. Without hesitation, he pointed the blade at his thigh and plunged it in fiercely, pushing it deeper. Then, he quickly pulled it out. He let out a muffled grunt, unable to hold it in, and fell straight to his knees. He could even feel the blade tearing through his flesh. Blood gushed out like a spring, soaking his pants in seconds. He was wearing dark blue jeans, but they couldn't hide the dark red bloodstains. Though she was far away and her vision was blurred by tears, Vivian could still see the red patch on his thigh, and her tears flowed uncontrollably. The aftershock of the pain hit, and Ethan barely had the courage to bring the knife to his left leg. But Lydia was watching him from just a few meters away, threatening him with Vivian's life. And just moments ago, he had received Vivian's forgiveness, whether it was genuine or not. He couldn't miss this last chance. Biting his lip hard, he endured the excruciating pain and once again plunged the blood-stained blade into his other leg. It wasn't as fast or precise as the first time, but it was just as deep. The slowness was a form of torture. He clearly felt every second of pain, which stretched on for what felt like a century. After the heart-stopping agony that shot through his limbs had subsided, he asked in a hoarse voice, "Lydia Monroe, I've done it. Can you let Vivian go now?" Lydia's eyes were filled with a blood-red hatred. "One stab per leg? How does that prove you're crippled? It's not enough, not nearly enough." Ethan understood what she meant and began to stab his legs randomly. The jeans were soaked through with blood, their original color completely obscured. Vivian couldn't take the stimulus. She coughed up a mouthful of blood and fainted. The warm liquid on her arm disgusted Lydia. Realizing Vivian had passed out, she began to panic. If Vivian really died at her hands in a moment of panic, Lydia let go of Vivian, who immediately crumpled to the ground. Ethan's vision was blurred with pain, and he didn't notice. And Julian, who had finally found the rooftop through the security cameras, only saw a crazed Ethan stabbing his own legs with a dagger, and Vivian lying on the edge of the rooftop, her collar stained with blood. Lydia had already fled. How could Julian possibly care about her? He rushed to Vivian's side, knelt down, and cradled her head in his lap, his hand trembling as he checked for her breath. Julian's voice startled Ethan, but he had no strength to get up. the taut string in his mind snapped. The dagger clattered to the ground, and Ethan collapsed with it. Ethan's legs were permanently crippled. Neither Vivian nor Ethan wanted to press charges against Lydia, so Julian had to drop it. Ethan's disability was officially ruled an accident. A sunny day. Vivian, who was supposed to be abroad with Julian, was pushing Ethan in a wheelchair, taking him out to enjoy the sun. Seeing that Ethan and Vivian had buried the hatchet, and learning that Ethan had crippled his legs for her, Julian felt a bitter pang but had to give up his humble hope. When it came to Vivian, he was long used to wanting what he could not have. He remained in Seaport City, telling himself he was staying to make sure Ethan didn't mess up again. But he knew with certainty that Vivian, wasting away in the hospital, wouldn't even live to see the scabs form on Ethan's legs, let alone see him mess up again. Seeing a boy and a girl flying a kite on the lawn, Vivian said, "Ethan Vance, let me fly a kite for you one more time." Ethan shook his head, emphasizing, "No," but Vivian seemed not to hear him. She pushed him onto the lawn and bought a kite from the little girl. Ethan Vance, watch closely, her smile, carried on the wind, was as bright as it had been in their youth. How he wished she was free from illness, happy for a lifetime. How he wished he had always been the Ethan Vance who loved her. Ethan watched without blinking as she failed, as she frustratingly untangled the string, as she succeeded, as she childishly sought his praise. "Ethan Vance, I'm tired." Vivian returned the kite to the little girl and came to his side, her voice soft and pleading. Ethan said, "Vivian, then you should rest." She knelt beside the wheelchair and rested her head on his lap, saying obediently, "I'll just lie down for a moment. It won't hurt you. And if it does, just bear with it. I'll only be a moment." "Okay." Vivian never woke up again.